Really good. It's been a lot of work, and believe it or not, these 24-hour, can you imagine just going 24 hours straight in a meeting?
Wow. You're not tired?
We do it once a week, and then we take a break for the rest of the weekend. But I mean, but here's the thing, Alessandra, it's what we're doing is so important, as we'll get into. When something is that important, you're willing to sacrifice. And that's the situation here. It is that important. And how you doing, Alessandro?
I'm hanging. I'm all right.
Just hanging? How's school going?
School, just, school the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say it's good or bad.
Yep. I hear you. And how about the funner parts of life? Friends and sports and stuff like that?
It's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yes. So he was practicing the guitar. We invited his dad to come and listen to him also because his dad lives in California.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling him, well, I know last time people wanted to listen to him play the guitar for a little bit. And he was like, well, if they ask, I'll probably play it.
All right. Well, I could totally get into some music from Alessandro.
He's shy. He hates cameras. When we go outside and I'm trying to take a selfie with him, and I'm like, he's shy. I think he got that from his dad, and because mom is not shy at all.
I've noticed.
Yes. So gonna play the guitar for a little bit. A few seconds. He says his fingers hurt him because he's been playing since he came from school.
I can play a little something.
Okay.
So, do you know the movie Inception?
It rings a bell. What's it about?
It's about dreaming. People dreaming and going into a dream, and in that dream they're going into another dream. No?
I don't think I've seen it. Mm-mm.
So there's this song from that movie that really catches my attention. And the music artist also catches my attention because he makes really good music. And today I just decided to, and I'm gonna just show you a little bit of it. stuff.
It's okay.
Yeah, forgot some of it.
So that's something you were practicing today?
Yeah. It just makes me more nervous to play it when it's like in front of people.
No,
Earlier I was there. Yeah.
no, it's beautiful, Alessandro.
Like this.
I'm listening to that. I wanted to cry. I mean, it's just there's just so much beautiful emotion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good, touching song. It's from Hans Zimmer.
Mm.
So, you know the movie Interstellar?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the same, do you know the theme song?
I'd
No.
probably recognize it if I heard it.
Yeah, you definitely remember it, but the same artist makes both of those songs from the movie, and those movies are nominees, I believe so. So yeah.
What? Did they have lyrics on the songs or?
No,
No?
it's just like,
Oh, really? It's just like
yeah.
music notes. Nice. So I would like to know, how's Nolan doing from the other side of the screen?
I think Nolan is actually on a phone call, but he'll be back very shortly.
Good. That would be amazing if Jackie's twins will be here also.
Yeah, I had no idea. I'll be better prepared next time. First, one of my twins will never get on screen. He's extremely shy. The other one, he's a ham. He'll get on. So I'll plan that for next week. Is this going to be like the 8 o'clock hour? Is that usually going to be?
Well,
Kids?
it could be. This week it was supposed to be like 7 to 8, but we went a little over time. So this would be like, yeah, probably about. I don't know. We'll see, because on the other hand, it may make sense to do it a little earlier so that it's not so late for the kids. Hey,
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, because I was thinking of a few moms from base camp that are on the East Coast and their kids are already in bed.
exactly. That's what I was thinking. And then,
Yeah.
we might get some folks from Latin America. Could be up, 2 or 3 hours later, depending. Hey, I see Douglas. Welcome, Douglas. Welcome back.
Hey, Douglas.
Douglas, you've got quite a following since you stirred things up so nicely last week.
Oh my God, it was amazing. It was like watching a suspense movie. I'm not even joking. I couldn't stop talking about Douglas with Jackie on our yoga classes, which it was amazing. But welcome, Douglas. I'm hesitant to hear about you again after how many minutes we have. Maybe Ryan is not going to be able to come in. Maybe they're out doing something. I mean, it's sad.
So right now, Douglas, and for the next, 45 minutes to an hour or so, we're going to be talking, the general subject area is kids. And, how do we talk with our kids about this? Do we involve them? To what extent do we involve them? I'm very proud of Greta Thunberg for taking the lead, as she has, and so many of our youth who've stood up. But I mean, in a way, this is just like such an elemental conversation, right? Because when we have conversations with our youth, with our kids, we, you know, what do? By default, we tell it like it is. But the situation of like it is, for me, is a really challenging one, because here's the thing. And Douglas, I'd like to know if you agree with this statement. We can totally do this. It's totally within our means to do this, to cool the planet, to transform every aspect of our existence here on the planet and save life on Earth. The hard part is not that it's physically difficult or impossible to do this. The hard part is, how do we get humanity to come together? Right? That's our biggest challenge. If we were united on this and we said, look, here's the deal. We're going to take care of everyone. We're going to make sure no one starves. Everyone's cared for. That's totally doable. And humanity, let's all pull together and work on the same team. And let's build out the collective superintelligence, and let's organize ourselves, plan it out, you know, marshal the resources, and do it. But where we're getting stuck is, how do we get humanity, A, to wake up, and B, to come together? And those are two different things, right? They're very related, right? But they're different. And we're starting from a place of so much attachment, so much addiction, so much distraction, so much obsession with possessing and hoarding and making it in the game that we play with other humans of accumulation. More for me, less for you, right? This competitive game, right? How do we get out of that competitive game and into a whole new game where we trust each other and we work together? I mean, it sounds very ideal, utopian and all that, but I mean, we're coming out of 10, 12,000 years after the agricultural revolution, you know, of hoarding and competition. Tens of thousands of years ago, we all worked together in our tribes, in our groups, right? That was the way we made it. So we need to come back to that. But we've taken such a long detour into this world of hoarding, accumulation, and competition that it's almost like we've forgotten how to really work together as humanity.
Is it only competition? I mean, I think there's also there's a population of us that it's deep entrenched scarcity also that we're dealing with. It's that mindset of scarcity. So there's some of us that come from and I don't want to take the conversation in a different direction, but those of us that have some form of privilege get seduced by the competitiveness of it. And then some of us that come from, you know, lack or situations where we are economically, you know, not balanced, that there's this mindset of scarcity that even when we have the ability to see, it's still through the lens of scarcity. So that's where fear comes in, and that's where the challenges of how we talk to our children, because then we don't want to pass that fear on to then our children. So it's that competitiveness and that scarcity. And then there's some of us that walk that line between the two, that have lived on both sides. How do we even communicate that to them when they have that mindset from that's steep in both?
I personally think, Jackie, that it's very important for us to approach to them and ask them directly. Ask them directly, what do they think? How do they feel? What are they willing to do? How does this concern them? you know, just little stuff like that. And I think I think that's what's more reliable, to listen to them, and of course to support them at 100%. um, I know that Ali's dad, he's just logged in right now. He's probably watching him right now play the guitar. So it's just that fact. For instance, like Alessandro, my son, he was telling us last week, I don't know what Jamin asked him, but he said the pursuit of happiness, like reach that pursuit of happiness. How do we reach the pursuit of happiness? And I know they have to do it on their own, but how can we push them to reach that? And what really makes them happy? So, I mean, like Ali said, I mean, before we got in here for the first segment for the kids, I was like, so he was like, what do I do here? I'm like, well, you just open your ears and see what they have to ask you. They have doubts and they want to know, what is it that you're feeling? What is it that you're thinking about this whole situation?
But when you say we, are you talking about we as a society, as culture? Are you talking about we as parents? Because we've had these conversations where, and we're talking culturally, societally, then we have to start with the parenting and how we see our children. Because
yeah, definitely. Parenting is the first step.
Yeah, it totally is, because it's what you're asking us to look at our children as they have value and they have something to contribute to the conversation. That's not even a mindset that's the norm, to see that our children have wisdom to contribute, that we have something to learn from them, that we give them the space and the opportunity and the reverence to listen and be there to give them the resources and the tools. So children are happy. We are all happy, but that's suppressed, right? Our belief systems, and it doesn't let us actualize, because we're all born with the potential that we're always going to have, and it's just not expressed. So the language that we use with our children also is not so much asking, you know, what makes you happy, is to asking, what is it that you want? How do you want to fulfill yourself? How do you see what's going on? How does it make you feel? Talk about their feelings, their emotions, how they're processing what's going on. And I think when we give our children that language and that space, that's, I think, where the conversation will accelerate, because we have to give them that agency again to feel like they're empowered to not only see what's going on, but to communicate what's going on, to give them that agency to live that and express what they perceive what's going on, to give them that voice.
Definitely. I love Jackie to the moon and back. She always has the right the right way of expressing what I'm trying to express in many sentences. Yeah, definitely, Jackie. We're on the same page.
You know, I also love Jackie and what she says, what you just said, sister. Because here's the thing. It's like, see, I don't have kids, and but I'm 51 years old, and I've, believe it or not, for all my life I've wanted to have kids, but it just never happened. And that's okay. I mean, I've been able to, you know, help raise other kids and tutoring and different forms of, you know, anyway, being there for them in different ways. But I've had plenty of time to think about what conversations I would have with my kids, right? And easy for me to say, not having kids, but if I did have kids, I imagine I would sit down with them and say, look, here's what's going on. And then you know what I'd say? I'd say, what do we do? Right? I love having those conversations with everyone, and kids are no exception, because what else am I going to do? Not tell them what's going on? Right? Not tell them my thoughts as to what we could do? You know, when I was a teenager and there was a big oil spill up in Alaska, my dad and I sat down and we started talking about oil booms and what do you do to capture the oil, et cetera, right? And keep it from spreading. So, you know, that's how I grew up. and I feel super blessed because of that. And so it seems natural to me for so many reasons, but among the reasons are the youth have so much energy, so much creativity. Their mind is totally open because they haven't been told, oh, that's impossible, that's impossible, that's impossible. And also, they're far less attached to the material. You know, what do they have? Their clothes, toys, books, whatever, right? They don't have to worry about that stuff. They haven't gotten into that game of accumulation, or much less than we have as adults. So for all those reasons, I mean, look what Greta was able to achieve, right? What if, here's a big stretch idea. What if we helped the kids come together on this medium, talk with us, talk with each other, all of the above? Why exclude them, right? Because here's the thing. Once we get the message down so clear and simple, right? You know, maybe we do some simple experiment where you take a bright light and you shine it, I don't know, on a bowling ball or something, and then it starts to heat up and heat up and heat up. And then you cover it with aluminum and you do a side-by-side experiment and look at the temperature, the one covered with aluminum and the one that was just a black bowling ball, right? Which one heats up faster? Well, it's obvious. Now look at the news: fires here, fires there, melting ice, etc. It's really simple. The planet's overheating, right? And imagine we get to the point where there's such a network of kids who are totally engaged in this. I mean, shoot, it's their world too. Some could argue it's even more their world than ours because they're going to inhabit it much longer and they're going to inherit it. So I would think they would, you know, number one, care. And number two, every kid wants to be a part of it, right? You know, I mean, I just have so many images of 2-year-old kids in diapers trying to help the grown-ups doing whatever they're doing. You know, they want to get in and help from the earliest age. So I think there's a big opportunity here. Imagine after, you know, a bunch of working with kids and kids working with each other, we get to a narrative that's so tight that an articulate 10-year-old gets on YouTube and says, you know, Mr. President or Mrs. President, blah, 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 this is happening. We know the solution. Here it is. What's the holdup, right? And there is no other solution. How else are you going to cool down a planet? You tell me. How else? What, stick a giant air conditioner? And then where do you take the heat? Right? I mean, it's just, you know, it's kind of ridiculous to even contemplate some other way of cooling the planet other than solar radiation management, other than reflecting sunlight back into space, right? So when we can get it to the point that all the kids in the world are saying, hey, mom, dad, you know, Mrs. President, you know, whoever, what's the problem? Teacher, right? Police officer, what's the holdup? We all know what we need to do. We have the technology. Why are you not doing it? Why are you sitting back and letting the planet overheat, burn up, all the ice melt, and we have no future? Right?
My gosh, I love that idea. I was just thinking about you holding this 90-minute, 1 hour, 30-minute session, explaining this to the children, and almost like, you know, like just pouring water on that seed of activism that they are. And what a blessing it is that you grew up where that, you know, children are naturally, they have scientific minds, they're explorers, they're manifestors, it's just who they are, right? So they're researchers. And to be able to grow up where that was not only cultivated, but that innate kind of curiosity was nurtured. Like so many of our children are not. They're told what they're going to be, what they're going to learn. They're told what they're supposed to be interested in, and they're told what their hobbies are supposed to be. So how do then we get the best of them out when we're suppressing all there is about their individuality? So to give a platform to these children that are drawn to this knowledge, drawn to this wisdom, drawn to like want to learn and speak more, to learn from you firsthand in the language that they speak, because I could see you totally relating to children, and give them this space a little earlier in the day where they can go out and ask the questions and engage and maybe go back and speak to their teachers and their principals and say, you know what, we need to be talking about this.
Totally. The question is real simple. No, 2 questions. Number 1, have you heard of SRM? No. Well, guess what? It's the only way to cool the planet in time to save life on Earth. Don't you care? You want to learn about it? Here, let me show you, right? And maybe have like a 2-page printout or something that we can just walk them through. Here's the idea. Maybe have a school science experiment, right? Or they get equivalent bowling balls, cover one with aluminum, one not. Boom. Take the temperature, read it, talk about it. If we can get the kids to say, what the heck? There's a solution. Why wouldn't we implement it? What's the holdup, right?
My gosh,
Douglas, I want your nieces and nephews to go up to you and pull on your pant leg and say, hey, Uncle Douglas, what's the holdup, right? Why aren't you grown-ups doing what you need to do? And that'll get a heck of a lot of grown-ups calling up their representatives and saying, hey, we need to get on this. What's the holdup? You know, you could even start a meme. I don't know, a 5-year-old girl saying, what's the holdup? Come on, let's go. Right? It's getting hot here. I'm getting hungry. You know?
I love that idea. I love that idea. And just every week, just have a different topic where they can come and learn about what's going on, but in a safe way, like we talk about solutions, so that there's no fear, because they have so much information and misinformation thrown at them, that this is a safe space that they can find the language to go and communicate this. And like you said, maybe protest at the science fair and make sure that, you know, they want to go to the mayor and, you know, and complain about what's going on in their town, and, you know, just cultivate that activism naturally in children. You know, they are the manifestors. They are so close to source energy. They are so uncontaminated that they must lead the way. They have the light that has not been encumbered by ego yet. That beauty that they can just with their thoughts and their smiles and their giggles can just express that beauty into the world. That's what we have to maintain. And if we can tap into that with this wisdom, there you go. Now that's the ripples of change.
Yeah, and, you know, I'd level with them. I'd say, listen, a lot of us grown-ups have gotten kind of screwed up, right? Because in this world, instead of a world where all of us are working together and making sure everyone has enough to eat and everyone's cared for, instead of that, right, what are we doing? We're just trying to take from each other, steal from each other, right? And steal from Mother Earth. We're just in this terrible system of money and scarcity and all that. And just, you know, say, look, it's all screwed up. We're working on, you know, how do we, you know, we're working on how do we transform all of life. I mean, what a conversation to have with kids. Just level with them. Say, listen, things are pretty darn screwed up in a lot of ways, you know, and it's up to all of us to come together and figure it out. Part of the problem is only the grown-ups have tried to figure it out, but we need the wisdom from the elders all the way to the youth. All of us need to come together, right? We all have different perspectives, and we need all of our perspectives. And when it's so simple that all the kids are saying, yep, this is exactly what we need to do, and we need to get the grown-ups to wake up. Imagine a bunch of 10 to 15-year-olds march on City Hall. Right? Or we have them in sections. So you have, you know, ages 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20. Right? And a bunch of kids holding signs saying, grown-ups, wake up. Right? Something. I don't know. I mean, I bet they'll come up with the ideas. Right?
Yeah. And, you know, when you were talking about being honest with them, I mean, that is the best gift that we can give to our children, is just pure honesty. Because children, the reasons why they can come up with the answers is honestly because they, again, are not tainted by ego. They're humble. They're about the unity of all. They're about the answers. They're about being our best, and they don't understand why those who are in power are not making those decisions, because their ego, they don't understand what that is like. They can't relate to not wanting to do what's best for everyone. So if we can maintain and we can harness that and we can help them shine that light of humility, then that's when it's going to shine the light on everything that's going on. Like all the answers we're talking about, the higher ups, it's all because it's all about self and it's all about gaining, where children cannot relate to that. They don't understand what that kind of mentality is. That's why we need to look at them and let them usher us in, because still those of us that are working on our consciousness and every day try to be as aware as possible, ego still sneaks in. You know, that's why we need them to guide, and let us impart on you the wisdom that we've learned from being on this planet. Let us give you the resources and the tools that you need, but please show us how to do this. Show us the way.
Well, yeah, I would modify it a little bit and say, look, together, let's figure this out, right?
Yes.
The last several hundred years, every major crisis, the grown-ups have tried to figure it out alone, and they've messed it up, right? This time it's going to be different. Let's work together. And how exciting will it be for them to talk with super cool grown-ups like us, who just talk to them straight. They don't, they're not, oh, let me tell you some little fairy tale and give you a lollipop. Now go away. No. We're saying, hey, let's work together. I think they'll be fascinated. Look, kids know when you're leveling with them and you're being honest, and when you love them. They know, right? They're not stupid. And they'll be able to, they'll be drawn to grown-ups like us who just put it on the table and say, look, we need you, and we all need each other. What a breath of fresh air. We've been so separated, so divided. Look, what you need to do is go to school, study hard, don't get into trouble, and brush your teeth, and great, that's inspiring, right? Basically, you're telling me I need to get out of your hair. We're telling them the opposite. We need you. And there's only one way we're going to get through this, and that is together. They'll love it. Wow. Suddenly they're part of the team. What more do they want? Part of team humanity.
And you'll hear some of the best conversations you'll ever hear.
Oh,
Honestly. I mean, I'm so looking forward to these conversations. I mean, just the ingenuity, just the genius, and just children, I'm looking forward to this.
And just being able to level with them, rather than having one of these gobble grown-up conversations. Well, it's politically impossible. Blah, blah, blah. Well, I think technology can. Well, come on. The stuff that comes out of people's mouths, right? Hey, sweetheart. Yeah. Are you overhearing? No, okay. We're talking about having just actual conversations that just get right to the heart of the matter.
Hi, Jackie.
With our kids,
Yeah.
And I mean,
Hi, Micah.
and of course our elders, everyone, and I mean, it's just going to be so exciting, because kids talking with grown-ups, talking with each other. We're not like excluding the kids, corralling them and saying, here, watch some dumb cartoon. SpongeBob SquarePants, great, No, I think it's just going to be so crazy exciting.
I was mentioning to Jamin yesterday that I'm in communication with a group here in the Northwest called Families for Climate Change. And they asked me to get involved with the kids, connecting the kids with children from around the world. And they want to do like a pen pal thing, where they write each other letters, which would be so awesome. Maybe we could get something like that going. And I thought it might be really awesome actually to invite the kids and their families to come and talk on Block Party about the projects they're doing, because they're like doing tree planting programs with the kids, all these different things focused on climate change, but children taking action. So I just thought that could be really inspiring. So I'll reach out to them next week and see if they'd be down with that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Heck
Like,
yeah.
Oh my that warms my heart. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. What is it called? Families for Climate Change?
Families for Climate Change. Yeah, I can send you the info.
Yeah, please do, because I want to see if there's anything like that locally here. I didn't even think of something like that we can look at locally and invite them. You know,
Yeah.
whatever movements we have going on locally, that we should all reach out to our communities and see if there's kind of these efforts being made locally that we can all invite them so the children can all connect.
Yeah. Yeah, and you might want to see if there's a Waldorf school in your area too, because I bet they're doing stuff around the planet.
Yes. We even have a Reggio school that just opened up. So that's a good idea too.
Yeah, awesome.
Yay.
Great. Well, okay, I'll check in later. Good to see you guys, and thank you for all the beautiful work you're doing.
Oh, thanks, Melissa.
See you later.
Thanks, sweetheart.
Thank you.
Love you, babe.
Well,
Wow.
I've got like 2 minutes and then I've got to log off.
Yeah, no problem.
So,
No problem, Jackie. You know, I don't think I've ever had this conversation with kids that's just so straight and to the point. And we'll, you know, I think we'll have to have something written up for the parents that basically say, listen, you know, we're going to talk about all this stuff. We're not going to not talk about it. And we're going to talk about, you know, exactly what needs to be done. And not even all the grown-ups necessarily agree on that. And, you know, so there's going to be ambiguity and there's going to be this and that. And we're going to be confronting the fact that the majority of grown-ups don't understand this or don't get it, aren't looking at it, right? They don't understand the urgency. They don't understand that there's a solution. They don't know that there's a solution, right? Well, you know, why aren't they talking about it on the news? Good question. Why aren't they talking? And maybe the kids can call up the news anchors and say, yeah, I want to know why you're not talking about the urgency of this and that there's a solution and that we need to do it now. Do your job, right?
I can just visualize Ryan calling 911.
Yeah. Well, no, have them call the networks. Have them call the television stations. Yeah, or even 911. Yeah, what do you guys say? Yeah, emergency? Yeah, we got an emergency here. The planet's overheating, right?
I just thought of something else as well. Like, I don't know in Arizona, but here they have the Fridays for the Planet action days. All the high schoolers they don't go to school anymore on Fridays, and they stand outside of the town halls and things holding signs up saying climate change is real, you know, etc. So I think that's another group we could contact. And last year, Jamin and I went down to one of the high schools in Seattle and met with 2 students who were spearheading a big climate day of action at the high school. And then I went a couple months later and worked with the kids when they shut the school down. And I did something on artful activism with the kids. So I'm just wondering if you couldn't get back in touch, like with the teachers at the school, and see if there's some way to get the teens involved, because they're really the ones who, you know, they're mature enough to handle the information and they're taking action. Whereas I think we got to be careful, like with the elementary school and preschool and kindergartners, we got to use the right language and, you know, maybe tell stories and puppets and stuff like that. I don't know. I just, yeah. So each level we address climate change at that level, so that we're not tipping, you know, little kids can only handle a certain type, you know, the information presented in a particular way, I think, that doesn't bring fear.
You know, that's what we were talking about a little bit earlier, because, but at what age do you cut it off? At what age do you start, you know, talking reality with them? Age 10, age 8, age 12?
Well, teens, certainly. I think 8th grade, probably. 8th grade, you can. Maybe some 7th graders. I think there's ways to talk about it. You know, I have to think about that a little bit.
Yeah. And I was going to suggest the same thing, Melissa. I was going to say adolescence is different. And I don't think that I think the how we explain it changes. I think statistically how forthcoming we are, but I think we always are sharing the truth. Like we're always telling them the truth, just like with any difficult information that we're trying to share with our children.
Okay.
You know, death, divorce, you know, you don't speak to the 8-year-old the same way you speak to the 15-year-old.
Right.
You know, but we still don't lie to them, and we don't, you know, not give them the truth. So I really do think that this is an opportunity just to maybe with the younger ones, help give them the language to express their own concerns and give them solutions that they can share. Whereas the older ones, really just empowering them to be the activists, to do the work, to go out and create the solutions in their communities, in their schools.
Yeah.
So I think it's like it's the same information, but there's at the different ages, what they do with the information is going to be different developmentally.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying to lie to the kids. Like when
no, I wasn't. No, it was like, you know, because Jamin is very, very adamant, like we are, about making sure we say the truth to our kids and say the truth. So I've had conversations with adults that say, well, you don't have to tell them that yet. They're not old enough to handle that yet. And so when questions come up, they would rather say light mistruths because they think that the children can handle it. And then later on, we're actually telling them something different than we told them when they were younger.
Yeah. When I was teaching at the preschool, what I did with the kids, so I did a whole block on Haida culture, language, songs, dances, and Mother Earth. And so, for example, I had them make papier-mâché earth globes, and then we talked about Mother Earth and how she's a living being. And then, you know, I said, we have to take care of Mother Earth, you know. Oh, yes, they'd say, we have to take care of Mother Earth. And I'd say, you know, she's having a really hard time now. We have to take care of all her children. So, you know, it's through stories. I use puppets. And then what happened is they became warriors for Mother Earth, these little tykes, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And I taught them Haida songs, and they would all want to be the leader of the song. And finally, I just, you know, practicing equity, had the whole entire class and then the whole entire school. Everybody wanted to be a leader. I'm like, okay, everybody, you're all leaders. And they'd all stand up and they go, yaha, hey, ya, hey. Yaha hey, ya hey, ah ha ha, yaha hey, ya hey, which thanks Mother Earth for all that she blesses us with. And so they became warriors for Mother Earth. And I would say that's how we have to approach it for these little guys, you know, because they can become warriors. They don't need to know about extinction. They don't get that. That's way too sophisticated a term for a little child to understand. They're just coming into life, and sure, they some of them already face issues of mortality. Like I've had kids whose fathers or mothers have died, and we've had to deal with that, you know, in a very loving, sweet way, again, through story and about, you know, well, anyway, that's a whole other subject. But yeah, so that would be my suggestion. And, you know, we could do like story hours like that. And I'm sure Maida and you, Jackie, from your own culture, you know, we're all mixed cultures. We have these different ways of talking about reverence, or, you know, rebirth, life, you know, whatever, death, you know, springtime. You know, you can tell stories of rebirth through spring and then death through winter, you know. So I think we could get really creative about it.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Melissa. You made me cry.
I love you, Jackie. You're awesome. You're so in touch with your heart.
Sharing that. Oh,
Jackie, before you go, I know you got to run, but here's an idea. So, and here we can take a page out of the Dr. Silas Rao playbook. Make a pinky promise. I have a bent pinky, but you know, make a pinky promise. and say, look, and say to our kids, we are going to cool the planet, and we're going to help these ecosystems to heal, and mean it.
Well,
and once we commit to that, there's no turning back. That's just an idea. I just wanted to.
Well, why don't we make the little kids part of the fire department? You know, and you can do it again through story. You know, like I met this awesome woman on the island. She's a fairy, I swear. She's like a circus performer, and she goes around to schools and she teaches the kids. Like they did this whole thing focused on Australia, and they all would hold a koala bear just in their imaginations, and they would nurture the koala bear and feed it and heal it, and then they prayed for rain. She said 2 days later it rained in Australia. I was like, this is so awesome. Again, you know, I think this is role playing. So we got to role play with the kids. Like they can pretend they're the fire department putting the fire out on Mother Earth and saving the koala bears, for example. You know, and that's for the little guys, not the high schoolers. High schoolers are, you know, different completely group who could really get what you're talking about, because they're into advocacy. They're into protesting.
I remember when I was a kid, I don't know how old exactly, but I think I was pretty darn young. Like I might have been 7 years old or something like that. And my brother and I went to this day camp that was put on by the California Conservation Corps. And we learned all about conservation, water conservation, etc.
Oh.
Yeah, and you know, we'd go home and we're putting stickers everywhere that says don't waste water, etc., etc.
That's awesome.
So I mean, we could. And this was in the 70s in California when we had a drought, and I remember talking about it at school, and you know, we all learned about it, and you know, here's what we can do, and here's what we need. Now, in our case, you know, we would go home and talk about conservation. Imagine the kids go home and talk to their parents and say, are you guys part of the, you know, volunteer fire department? Well, why not? We need everybody. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs to join. Yeah. Because, you know, what are we going to do? Leave it up to just a ragtag, a few dozen people? Oh, they'll figure it. No, they're not going to figure nothing out. Yeah. We need to all come together. And that's really this message of unity, that the kids can help us remember that we all need each other and that we all need to come together.
You know, I'm just remembering when we were part of an Extinction Rebellion parade called the Solstice Parade in Seattle, and I made those giant salmon luminaries. They're part of an advocacy project to save the Chinook salmon because the orcas are starving up here, and that's their main source of food. And they're about 5 feet long, and we had 2 of them. Jamin had one, I had the other, and we were moving the salmon. And we would talk into the crowd, and I would talk to the moms, and they all had their kids, and to the kids and say, we have to take care of the salmon people. We have to take care of the whale people. And the moms would turn to the children and say, listen to what they're saying, for they're telling the truth. And I was really shocked by that, because I thought there'd be like resistance, but there wasn't. Like they really got it. But again, it was through puppetry or, you know, luminaries and stories, you know, and talking very gently about, let's take care of Mother Earth. Let's take care of the orca people. They're our family too.
Oh, I love it.
All right. I'm going to go have tea now.
Okay.
See you later. Hasta luego.
All right. I have to go too. I love you guys. Mwah.
Love you, Jackie. See you soon, sister.
Love you, twin. I'll see you tomorrow morning.
All right. Emery just wrote something. Just try to imagine thousands of Gretas out there speaking to all the people around the world. Brilliant. Absolutely. Well, is Alessandro still game?
Ali, he's right here on his cell phone.
All right. Have you been listening in, Alessandro?
What do you think about it?
What was that?
So we're talking about, you know how like up until now, we've been like, all right, this is this big problem and da-da-da, and what do you think about it? But we haven't invited you into the conversation of what do we do about this, right? Would you like to be in that conversation, Alessandro, of what do we do about this crisis? The crisis of the planet overheating.
Yeah, I would be interested.
Awesome. So, you know, I'd love to actually hear. Let's see. Oh, first of all, let me welcome Oswald, who just joined us, and let's see. Okay, gotcha. Oswald's just using the chat, so he's asking about Elon Musk, which I'm happy to answer a little later, if you don't mind hanging in there, Oswald. And welcome back, James. James in Cork, Ireland. Check it out, Alessandro. James is joining us from Ireland, and it's like in the middle of the night there, right?
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, if you want, I can give you my take on the problem, or you can ask me questions and I can answer them, or, you know, where do we start, Alessandro?
You can tell me your take.
Okay, so here's my take. Human beings, we used to live kind of more as part of nature, right? I'm getting some feedback from somewhere. Is that you, James? It might be James. James, can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Okay. All right. So here's my take on the problem, Alessandro. And if you want to mute your microphone when you're not talking, if that's easy for you to do. Okay, awesome. Thanks. So my take on it is this. All the greenhouse gases. Do you know? Wait, you're kind of frozen there, Alessandro. Can you hear me okay? Okay, now you're not frozen anymore, so that's okay. All right. So here, just give me a thumbs up if you're still with me. You're looking still with me? Okay, great. Hey, James, welcome back. So James, I don't know if you heard the earlier conversation we were having, but we're basically talking about including youth in this conversation and all of us working together instead of us grown-ups trying to figure it out by ourselves. What if we say, hey, listen, we're all in this together. Let's all figure it out together. So my take on the problem, Alessandro, the planet, starting with the greenhouse gases, we just started overheating and overheating. We were like retaining heat because the greenhouse gases are like a blanket, right? And so we're now at a point that the planet is just getting hotter and hotter and hotter. The ice is melting. We've got forest fires all over the place, and it's going from bad to worse. And we need to cool the planet. We urgently need to cool the planet. Because if we don't cool the planet, it's just going to keep on overheating, and it's going to be just utterly catastrophic, unimaginably catastrophic. The good news is we can stop the overheating and actually cool the planet. And the way to do it is to essentially install huge amounts of mirrors all around the world to reflect a portion of the sunlight that's landing on the Earth back into space. Okay? Because it's sunlight that's heating up the planet. And if we reflect a portion of it back into space, instead of letting it land on our planet, we won't get heated up as much. And that's a way that we can control the overall temperature of the planet, from getting hotter and hotter and hotter to actually cooling down. We can actually cool it down if we put up enough mirrors. So that's the situation, the way I see it in terms of the problem and the solution. But there's another problem, okay? The other big problem is that most people don't know either A, how bad the problem is, how urgent it is, or B, that there is a solution and that we just need to do it. They just don't know. It's like they're out to lunch, so to speak. It's like something has gotten into their brains that's not permitting them to take stock either of the problem or of the solution. Now, let me pause right there and turn it over to you, Alessandro. What in what I said is clear? What's not clear? Because if there's anything that's not clear in what I said, I can clarify it for you.
So you want to put like reflecting stuff like all around the world, where specifically?
Yeah. So there's basically the place where we're going to get the biggest bang for the buck in terms of reflectivity is to put these mirrors on the oceans, like floating mirrors or structures that can support giant mirrors. And when I say a mirror, it doesn't have to be like a piece of glass, like in your bathroom. It can be a thin plastic sheet that has a thin layer of reflective metal on top that just turns it into a mirror. You know, like when you open up some bags of potato chips, on the inside it's like metallic. That's that's the ultimate cheap mirror, that potato chip bag material, right? Because it barely gets any cheaper than that. So all I'm saying is it doesn't have to be like a big bulky glass mirror. It could be just, and because we literally need millions of square miles of this stuff. So we need just that. I mean, like, like if you look on the map and you see like the state of Alaska, we need a few Alaskas worth of reflectivity. So we're going to literally change the face of the earth with these mirrors.
And these mirrors, where would they be? Like, are they going to be like right on the ocean, like layered on top of it, or will you like kind of, I don't know, lift it up as like a roof?
Yeah, totally. So there's two ideas. So there's two ideas that we're working with. One is where we create these huge arrays of round mirrors. So a round mirror that might have a diameter of like 10 feet or so, and that would float. So it'd be a round mirror that would float. Imagine like taking two Frisbees, okay, and gluing them together to create like this round, sort of like a disc, right? That would be the general kind of shape. It'd be round, flat, and would float. And we create a whole array of those. So that's one way, is to create like, billions of these floating glass mirrors. The other way is what you suggested about creating like a roof. Imagine we created some really sophisticated sort of like pontoon systems. So you got these giant pontoons that are supporting like thin, relatively thin metal or structural columns. And then above those columns would be this huge canopy of roof that's reflective, and that would just reflect the light back into space. So it could be floating glass mirrors. It could be some sophisticated structure that supports giant canopies, right? Any of the above solutions. Another solution would be to crank out a whole bunch of these, like trillions of these little spherical, round, thin glass balls that would be totally reflective, and let those like float on the surface of the ocean, right? And then have like these barriers to contain them so that you only put them where you want them, right? So, so the key is just create reflectivity on the ocean, in different parts of the ocean. How do you do it? That's up to us to figure out, right? There's lots of possibilities that we've been talking about. So we've kind of got two problems. One is the engineering problem, right? The science and engineering problem. How do we create these vast amounts of mirrors and put them out on the oceans? But the problem that we need to solve before solving that problem is how do we get humanity as a whole to wake up, understand the urgency, and come together and cooperate to get all this funded and designed and built out, right? How do we get human beings to come together and work together? It's like we're inviting the whole world, we're inviting all of humanity to join with us on this massive project that's going to change the world. How's it going to change the world? By saving life on Earth. How's it going to save life on Earth? By cooling the planet. We need to cool the whole planet. It's like we're burning up, but we're burning up in slow motion. And so from one day to the next, everything's the same. Everything's the same. We're not waking up to the fact. I mean, if you're standing in the middle of the road and a car is coming at you at 40 miles an hour, you run out of the way. You see that threat coming really fast, so you jump out of the way. This is like a threat that's been building and building and building for decades. And because it's been so relatively slow moving, we haven't really woken up to it. And now we're at an absolutely urgent, critical point where we've pushed things way too far to the point that we now need emergency measures. You see, you've heard about all this stuff about, oh, you know, we got to reduce emissions and reduce carbon and all that so that we don't have so bad climate change, right? If we had done that back in the 60s or 70s or 80s or even 90s, we wouldn't be in this mess. But we didn't. We kept on burning fossil fuels, creating more and more greenhouse gases, retaining more and more heat. And now we're just at this critical point where we have to do like more extreme measures. These mirrors are extreme measures. But for really big problems, we need really big solutions.
Yeah.
And this is a really big, urgent problem.
So when I have like I have a question and an opinion.
Yeah.
I'll just ask the question first. So how long would we have all this reflective stuff up? Is it like a permanent thing, or is there a certain time we'll have it up and then replace them?
Yeah, no, great question. So let's look at it this way. All the carbon and everything, all the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, we need to get rid of those one way or another. And so, but we first need to put up the mirrors because that's just extremely urgent. We just got to do it. So we put up all the mirrors all around the world, cool the planet. Once the planet's cooled, it may take us years or even decades or even longer to really bring down all the greenhouse gases, right? Because they stick around a long time. They only slowly get absorbed. There's things we can do to increase the amount that they absorb, but we're still not very good at that yet. But over the coming years and decades, we could become really good at it. So the short answer is the mirrors would probably have to be around for decades. But eventually, who knows, maybe 100 years from now or something, we could start to take them down once we've taken out the greenhouse gases. So the short answer is it's temporary, but long-term temporary, right? Not forever, but maybe for 100 years.
And then my opinion is, I feel like in order to really get people's attention is through really social media, because that's like just the core of how we live now. You know, everyone is just on social media and, you know, Snapchat and Facebook and all that stuff. And I feel like we have to just really try to get their attention on this. Like the movie The Purge, you know how like they have the alarm on the TV and stuff and all that. We have to like really wake people up and like kind of make them aware.
The movie's called The Purge.
You know the movie The Purge?
I haven't seen it.
No. Well, you know, or like when there's like in a movie when there's like a bombing and like they have like the sirens to like get everyone's attention.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, we need to sound the alarm somehow. And I totally agree with you. Social media is a great way to do it. Really great way to do it. In fact, what we're creating here for me is like the ultimate social media. You know, it's one thing to see a picture of Jamin from 5 days ago. You're scrolling through Facebook, there's Jamin and something you wrote 5 days ago. It's another thing to be talking with Jamin face to face. Right? I mean, there's no comparison. You talk with me now, I'm alive. You look at a picture of me from 5 days ago, it's just a bunch of pixels. I'm alive, right? You know, you're talking with a real human being. And, you know, there's James in Ireland. Say hello, James. And I think James had something to say. Go ahead, James. You've been very patient. But James, you're going to have to talk slowly. So check this out, Alessandro. James speaks English, but with an Irish accent. Okay? So, James, if you'll speak slowly, then Alessandro can understand you. Go ahead, James.
Sure thing. Hi, Alessandro. Lovely to meet you. I saw you last week on with your mother. Not sure if you can hear me though. Can you hear me? Can you? Oh, okay. So I'm just like yourself to this in a sense, especially to this conversation here, the hospice, or this conversation here about the collective intelligence and organizing it. And you're right from the point that you made there about the social media. That is a very good point, and it is something that needs to be, you know, implemented now with like as if it was a viral meme, that, you know, a funny meme or something. It has to be spread as fast as that now, you know, and it's the young people that can do that. But and you understand I'm not sure if you're aware of the exponential growth situation, but without going into that, it will spread fast and fast enough. But at the moment, all of us here at the moment are just beginners and learning. And I think, like, in order to, like, you had some valid questions about the where would they be putting the mirrors and everything else, and how, and Jamin was explaining that there'll be all different types of ways that we can deploy all different types of mirrors, but we don't all have the answers yet, and that is why this is the collective intelligence being formed for us to get those answers by having conversations like this. And like, just for example, as you were saying, what would be examples of the mirrors and reflections and everything else? A simple idea that when Jamin was saying there, when he was saying we need, reflection, mirrors, arrays the size of small countries or little islands or something like that. A thought came to me there, just simply like in the Pacific Ocean, we have islands of floating garbage, and I know they swirl with they're caught in the one particular or certain particular parts and currents, and they stay where they are, but they do move, but with buoyancy on top of that, and in a circular form, we say, and with the reflection on reflective materials on top of them, we could actually use the damage we cause to the ocean to help to repair the ocean. So ideas like that is just what I got out of suggestion, or something that yourself and Jamin were just talking there, and that's just two people. But I got that idea there from Jamin saying islands, and you asking questions about how can we put these mirrors together. So that's just a typical of an example of how this conversation can grow and bloom and prosper among everyone, for everyone's sake at this time. And as you mentioned the movie The Purge, I didn't watch it myself, but I am aware of it. And in relation to movies, I assume you're a movie buff. Do you like your sci-fi? You do? Yeah. So are you a Star Trek fan? Would you be a Star Trek fan? Not really. Not really. What about the Generations? Any of those? Okay, that's all right. But basically, the basic premise in Star Trek is that humanity reached a point where they had to have an overall global change of mentality in the way that they lived and perceived, and they had their politics and everything else. And in that way, then they were able to go to another level of humanity. And that is the stage that we are at the moment. So this is the platform to start that now. And once they move to that different stage of or level of mentality and a new way of thinking and became a united planet, well, out of that came all the voyages afterwards in Star Trek and all the adventures and the technologies and everything else. But all of it was inspired from a change of mentality and thinking on the planet originally in the start of Star Trek. And that's how they began to explore and the universe. So I think you might understand it in that sense, that that's kind of something where we're going now, or trying to go, is to get a global change of mentality, if that's any help to you. So that's it, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, James. Yeah, I totally agree with James. It's what we're doing here is creating a whole new modality of humanity coming together. I mean, would you have guessed 10 hours ago that you were going to be talking with a gentleman in Ireland where it's the middle of the night for him, but he's staying awake because this is so important, right? So we've had people from 9 countries so far here on the block party. Ireland, England, India, Japan, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, Mexico, and where else? One other country.
Israel.
Israel. Thank you. Thank you. Good man, James. Thank you. So people from 9 different countries talking with each other, right? And we're just getting started. The big idea, Alessandro, is that we get the world talking to each other, where this becomes like a thing, right? And there isn't just one video conference, the one that we're on right now. There could be thousands, tens of thousands, eventually millions, as people come together to talk about what matters the most and what we need to urgently do to cool the planet in time before all the ice melts and all the forests have burned down and it's too hot to even grow food. And we're heading in that direction very, very quickly. And it's been sort of like an exponential curve, right? If you see my hand here, right? It starts out slow and then it builds and builds. The next thing you know, it's going whoosh, right? It's at a point where it's just really accelerating right now. So, you know, the 60s, 70s, 80s, you could barely even tell there was anything going on. 90s, it starts to heat up a little bit. By the early 2000s, wait a second here, this is starting to, and then, but from the early 2000s to today, 20 years, there's just been discussion among governments. But the governments, the people in government, are some of the people with the most screwed up heads of all. Why? They've got too much power, too much wealth. They control too many resources. And so their ego starts to get all pumped up, right? And they start to think of themselves as invulnerable. right? So our biggest mistake as a species, I would say, in the last 50 years is to put our trust and our goodwill in the hands of a very few people high up in the government, and to say, oh, well, they're so smart, they'll figure it out, right? And we, the people, left it in their hands, and we went about doing our business. Oh, you know, I want to be a doctor. Oh, I want to be a lawyer. Oh, I want to be a baseball player. Oh, I want. And we have all been focused on what we want, thinking, oh, the governments, they'll figure it out. And now in 2020, a huge portion of humanity is wide awake to the fact that the governments have failed us, and we have failed us by putting our trust in the wrong place, by trusting the governments, right? So now here we are working overtime all night long, Friday nights, to fix this situation. Who? Ourselves. Who is ourselves? Well, it's Alessandro, Jamin, James, Douglas, Shankar, Jose Alfredo, Jose Abel, Nikki, Emery, and Oswald. Here we are. 10 people. And your mom, Maida. 11 people on a video conference. Thank you, Maida. And here we are, trying to figure this out. Figuring this out. And the clock is ticking. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. We don't have forever. We may only have a few months actually to really get the ball rolling. And you know what, Alessandro? I would say this is your world more than it is our world at this point, because you're so much younger. You're going to be around when we're dead. If we make it, if all of us make it through this very big challenge that we've got ahead of us. And so I would encourage you not to make the mistake I made when I was your age, the mistake of putting my trust in basically the grown-ups. If I were you, I'd say, hey, wait a second. This is my world too. And this situation is extremely dangerous, and it needs my help. It needs all of our help. Just by being in the conversation, you're helping us right now. You see that, right? And you see how James, listening to us, got this idea of covering that big island of plastic with reflective material? Brilliant. You talking about social media, now that's getting me thinking, and just watching your reactions, right, is helping me to think about 17-year-olds, right, in a new way. The point is, we all need each other. We're like one big team that forgot that it's a team. We need to remember that we're a team. And we need to do a lot more of this. Exactly what we're doing right now. Emery, do you mind if I read your question out loud, the one that you had about the food for thought? Or do you want to read it? Okay, I guess you mean you want me to read it. Okay. So Emery writes, food for thought. In the summer, when you drive your car, the engine gets really hot, right? What do? You put coolant into the radiator, right? So imagine trying to bring the cold water of the oceans into service, incorporated into massive land-based radiators. Okay. So Emery, here's how I see that. That would cool the radiators, but the heat would then get transferred to the, to the air, right? And so the heat wouldn't leave the earth. It would stay on the earth, right? Fine, it gets transferred from, let's say you dump a bunch of ocean water onto hot desert, for example, hot desert sand. What's the water going to do? It's going to evaporate, right? And what's the sand going to do? It's going to get cooler because of the evaporation, right? And the water being dumped on it. But the heat is still on the earth. The cool thing about the mirrors, the reflectivity, is it takes the incoming sunlight and boom, reflects it all the way out into space, away from the earth. The key is we've got to get the heat away from the planet. It's not enough to just take it from one part of the planet and move it to another. We got to get it out completely. And Emery writes, cooler keyword. Ice is on the land. Cooler. Yeah, the ice keeps the land cooler as long as there is ice, but we're in the process of melting the last remaining ice. That's one of the things that's so scary about this.
Just trying to keep cool.
Yeah. We're trying to cool the whole planet, and there's only one way to do that in time, and that's reflectivity, deployed very, very quickly.
You know, in the summertime, when it's really excruciatingly hot,
Yeah.
You get a spray bottle and you spritz yourself, you get cooler.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I know it's water vapor and all, but that cooling effect has you have to say something to that, no?
Well, so here's what happens. When you spray the spritzer on your body, then that water evaporates because it gets heated up by your body, which is warm. So your body heats up the water evaporates. When the water evaporates, that's when it really cools you down, right? But then what it's then doing is it's transferring heat from your body into the latent heat of water vapor. So, and then wherever that water vapor condenses, it'll release the heat there, either to the thing it condenses on or back into the air. But in all of these cases, heat is just getting moved from one part of the earth to another, from my body to the air, from the air to that rock over there. So it's like sweeping the trash underneath the living room carpet rather than taking it out of the house. We've got to get this heat out of the house of planet Earth, not just move it from one place to another within the house.
I understand. Tell me something like in the winter when the ski slopes are void of snow and they got their snow makers out there making snow. Is that snow cold?
It's totally cold. It's ice. It's shaved ice. They basically just have a massive, freezer that's just cranking out the ice.
So you're making more ice or more snow.
You're definitely making more ice. Yeah.
So there has to be some kind of a key there, I mean, every little bit helps.
Well, but here's the thing. The ice that you're making is actually not cooling the planet because, like if you stand behind a big industrial freezer right near its radiator, it's spitting out heat. So it's using electricity to take the heat out of the water and dump it into the air. But whenever you dump heat into the air, that's heat. So fine, you're taking heat from one place and putting it someplace else. That's just like what I was talking about sweeping the garbage under the living room carpet. The point is you got to get it out of the system that you're trying to cool. Here we're trying to cool an entire planet, right? And that means that we have to transport that heat a really long distance away beyond the atmosphere. And reflecting sunlight is the best way to do that. That's the best way to cool the planet. It's the only way, actually, to do it in time.
Sadly.
Well, it's just the reality. It's just what it is. The good news is we can do it. If we didn't have a way of cooling the planet, then we'd really be in trouble. Right now, we're only in trouble, not really in trouble. No, we're in trouble. But again, the biggest constraint is how do we get these human beings to A, wake up, and B, get on board and get behind the solution.
Thousands of Gretas.
Thousands of Gretas, or maybe a couple good Alessandros. No pressure, Alessandro. We're just talking here. I'm just using you as an example.
It's fine. But I was just talking to my mom about something. But like when you were talking about the government and how they're corrupted and stuff, I was like thinking of like how instead of like us just try putting our trust in them and like just looking up to them, to just kind of like change the perspective into like people who are admired a lot, you know, like people who are known, like celebrities and like people with like, you know, those kind of people to kind of say something for people to like to also get aware of it, because these are people who people would admire and look up to and would kind of open their eyes more to the situation. Because like, you know, the actress, what's his name, Joaquin Phoenix, he would also like mention this stuff, and he has like people who look up to him, who like kind of realize that this situation. So like, you know, I was just thinking of like having to instead of like people like us to try to get attention, to like just make it easier and to get like to the point of like the main people of like social media, like people who everyone that just goes to social media for, like celebrities, and you know, because that's just kind of how this society, I don't know what I can say, society is. It's like we pay attention more to other lives than ourselves nowadays, and I feel like that's how we can, you know, just awaken everyone.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So now the question becomes, how do we get certain celebrities to wake up, right? And then to get on board, right? Because one of the problems of being a celebrity is that you're rich and famous. And if you're rich and famous, it can mess with your ego, it can mess with your head, and then you can also start to have this sense that you're invulnerable, right? Because you start to put your faith in all this money that you've accumulated, and you think, hey, great, I'm all set. I could just live and live and live for decades, and I wouldn't have to work anymore. I'm all set, right? So you start to get this feeling of invulnerability, right? And this hyperinflated ego, and you can't, this is something weird about humanity, but once a human being owns something and they possess whatever they possess, they really get attached to it and they don't want to let it go, and they have a hard time imagining it going away. In other words, they have a really hard time grappling with the extent of the threat. They don't think it's going to be that bad. And this is the vast majority of humanity thinks this way. You know,
Um,
sorry.
yeah, you're right. But there's like also some who aren't as like that. Like for example, Will Smith. You know, he does a lot of good things, and he's really inspirable. And also this singer who's also called Billie Eilish, and she actually kind of like made a move. Like she was like saying something about climate change and that we need to change it. And like honestly, for me, that kind of like caught my eye. So it's like I can see that doing the same to others. You know, like I'm not saying like other celebrities who like like the Kim Kardashians, like, but I'm saying like those who you can tell aren't just about money or fame. They're more just humble and awakened.
Totally. No, you're right. So it's a matter of reaching out to those celebrities that we think would be most likely to get it
Yeah.
and to do the right thing about it.
Yeah.
Love it. Good stuff. You see how we're cooking up solutions right here? And you see how we couldn't have gotten to this point in the conversation without you, Alessandro?
Right. Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. And you're welcome here anytime, all the time, as far as I'm concerned. In fact, we need you. This is really big stuff that's going down. And guess James. James got something to say.
As usual, an Irishman can't seem to leave a void empty of silence. So I'm back again. Yeah, those were very good points, Alessandro. And the suggestions in regards to the celebrities is a very good and valid point as well. You are right. There are a number of celebrities out there who are now very much aware of the desperate situation that we are in at the moment. Like Harrison Ford has made impassioned pleas. There's a number of them. If you look at them on YouTube, you'll see there's a number of them who are making impassioned pleas for the climate catastrophe we're facing now at the moment. And that would given the fact that is a very very good suggestion for you. I think maybe if you had a look on YouTube to see what celebrities you can maybe track down that are very much aware of this situation. As regards for them to join in on this hospice sorry, I keep talking into this conversation here. I would say for the moment, because it's still in its only very early stages, when this I think by next week this should be, again, the numbers should be growing, as I said, exponential growth. Think of it as Jamin was saying with the charts. For a while it is going to go along, and we people might think there's nothing happening here, there's nothing happening here, there's nothing happening here. Oh, what are all these? Where did all these people come from? Oh, no, everybody's on board. So it's just the same. This will be just the same as that. And so, as food for thought for yourself, because it was a very good suggestion for you, I think you should look up some of the people that you think are influential in this situation, and that could give people awareness. And perhaps then you can treat it as a little project or something like that, or your type of research or your part that you want to play in it or something. When the conversation starts to really expand and get very interesting, we can then approach these celebrities that you have on your lists, and we can then let them know about the conversation, and let them know that we're not asking anything of them, only to give their own bit of personal time to just view the conversations that people are having here without even interacting. Because it's a great idea with the celebrities, but all celebrities, the downside of it is that people get distracted from the situation when they're on the scene. People want to, they get distracted by their celebrity. So the conversation has to flow smooth, and everybody has to be respectful in this room and in this conversation. And once the celebrities see that is the way the conversation is going, smooth and respectful, and it's engaging, and it's it's engineering new ideas for ways to tackle all of these problems that they're so impassioned about. So I think it was a great suggestion from you, and I think you should maybe take that on board as food for thought, and maybe do a little research on that. So thank you, and thank you, Alessandro. It is very good to see the young people your age getting on board and paying attention to the most important matters that we have now at the moment. So thank you.
Here, here. Thank you, Alessandro. And welcome back, Miles. Miles, you were on last week when we were talking with Alessandro, right?
Yeah. Hey, Alessandro. Good to see you again. I like your idea about celebrities. And here's what we got to do. Bon Jovi has got their 2020 tour happening. And guess what? It's a double header. Bryan Adams is on tour with him most of the time. And Bryan Adams is vegan. So what we got to do is take the block party everywhere these guys are touring and have these massive tailgate parties. Even if we didn't get a ticket, you could still just party it in the parking lot, party it up. So let's see, what do we got here? Tour. Get this, Tacoma, Washington, June 10th. Then they're on to Portland, June 11th. Sacramento, June 13. San Jose, June 16. Los Angeles, June 18. 20th of June, they're in Las Vegas. 23rd, San Antonio, Dallas, and 25th. So all of June, unfortunately, I'm really ticked because they only come to Canada. I'm up here in Calgary. They're only playing Toronto. So, Montreal. Oh, there you go. So that's July. Newark, Boston, Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, Washington, New York, a couple of dates. So as I said, Bryan Adams is vegan. So these guys would spread the message. Now I know, Alessandro, you're not a Bon Jovi fan probably, or Bryan Adams, but for us old timers, we could do this, right? Just get rocking, get these guys on board, like all the vegans around all these cities need to show up, whether they have a ticket or not, and do their stuff. Let's do the solar radiation management displays, the vegan displays, right there. All these thousands of people heading into these stadiums, they will see all these activities. You probably can't really see that. It's too bright, isn't it?
It
My
looks like
screen.
a mood lamp, or I mean, all we see is bright light. It's like a stadium light.
I'm not sure how I can do that.
No,
in any
don't
other way,
worry.
but
It's all right. We
so
Mhm.
there you go. You know, you start pulling out their songs and you start singing them. So what's your favorite Bon Jovi song here? Let's dig these up. Let's take a look at some of these songs these guys have written. All right, how's this? How about this one, Believe? This is an excellent Bon Jovi song. I'm afraid to play anything because maybe Zoom would disconnect Jamin. I don't know. Like maybe if you could just play a little segment, perhaps.
Why don't you just sing it? Sing it for us, Miles. What's the?
Well, okay, I'm not going to sing it, but listen to these. These are lyrics by Bon Jovi. All I know is what I've been sold. You can read my life like a fortune told. I've seen the dream. There ain't no land of Oz, but I got my brain and I got my heart and courage built. Man, I won't let go. What we need right now is soul. I can't do this. You can't do that. They feed us lies, but I won't act. And all good things will come to pass, but the truth is all you have to have. And would you lie for it? Would you cry for it? Would you die for it? Would you? I believe. You know, so anyway, that song is very powerful, right? It goes on, with every breath that I breathe, you and me can turn a whisper into a scream. I believe, you gave it all, then you gave more. That's what Jamin's doing. He's given it his all, and he gives even more. 24 hours a day here. You know what you came here for. So let's see, what else have we got here? This is an excellent one. I love this one. And it's called Born Again Tomorrow. So listen to this. If you were born again tomorrow, you've seen it and that's not what you wanted. Ain't gonna say the sky is falling. You gotta read between the lines. Stop waiting for a sign. Who's gonna live your life? Yeah, you don't have to look back to see where we are. The future's looking brighter than a handful of stars. You gotta hold on, be strong. If you're born again tomorrow, would you live your life like yesterday? If you're born again tomorrow, I wouldn't live my life any other way. Don't have to end up where you started. Heaven loves the brokenhearted. You learn from your mistakes. Bones grow stronger when they break. Who said the scars don't fade? Yeah, you don't have to look back to see where we are. The future's looking brighter than a handful of stars. You gotta hold on, you gotta be strong. If you're born again tomorrow, would you live your life like yesterday? If you're born again tomorrow, I wouldn't live my life any other way. Wouldn't you relive every moment? Would you tear out any page? If you're born again tomorrow, I wouldn't live my life any other way. So you see, this is it. Hey, these songs motivate people. They have a psychological effect on people.
Good stuff, Miles. Good stuff, man. Emery,
So we just shadow them.
well, here, you know what I want to do is I'd like to get their manager on the phone, and just tell them what's going on. Like this last week, I called up the American Petroleum Institute in Washington, D.C. and said, hey, right, we've got a solution for your industry, right? So I'm excited to just call whoever I can get through to and tell them what's going on and tell them that we need them. Emery, you had your hand up a bit ago. Did you want to comment?
That's okay, no.
Okay. So, I mean, the point is we got to get through to these celebrities. How are we going to get through to them? You know, there's two ways I can think of right off the bat. One is call, and the other is fan mail. Send them a letter. Hey, you know, here's the deal, da-da-da-da-da, and we need your help. And there is a solution. I don't know if you know this, Mr. Bon Jovi, Mr. Brian Adams, whoever, but there is a solution to this. And just like you perhaps didn't know about it, most of humanity doesn't know about it. And they won't know about it unless you help spread the word. So we need you. All right.
Here's a favorite of mine. It's called Touch of Grey. So John Bon Jovi wrote this fairly recently. Because if you've seen him, he's pretty gray now, right? So I would have said a touch of bald, but you know, he's got hair. I don't have any hair, but so he's got this touch of gray is the title of this song. People everywhere, there's a revolution in the air. Protest signs and people walking, talking heads on TV talking. Pick a team, choose your side. Ain't no room for compromise. We're running out of better days. Brother, all I'm trying to say, you see black and I see white. No two hearts can beat the same. In a world of many colors, there's a touch of gray. I say wrong when you say right. Different faces, different names. Brother, brother, brother. It's okay to say, hey, I see things with a little touch of gray. If I whisper, will you listen? Will I answer if you scream? Politics and bad religion took a hammer to the dream. Everybody loves their children, forgiveness and a second chance. One more thing we got in common. Ain't love why we do this dance. Ain't love why we do this dance. You see black and I see white. No two hearts can beat the same. In a world of many colors, there's a little touch of gray. I say wrong when you say right. Different faces, different names. Brother, brother. It's okay to say, hey, I see things with a little touch of gray. I believe there's a train still coming. I believe there's room on board. Break the chains and raise your hands up. Be the change we're looking for. There you go. That's right. Now,
Beautiful.
If you go and you look these songs up, you know, you'll be blown away because, you know, I'm not doing them justice.
Sure. Yeah, no, I gotcha.
We're not violating any copyright, I don't think, with me reading these lyrics.
Yeah.
And it's for education purposes. Here's another one. What about now? You want to start a fire? It only takes a spark. You got to get behind the wheel if you ever want to drive that car. If you want to take a bite, you better have the teeth. If you're going to take that step, get up off your knees, because tonight you're alive. Who will stand for the restless and the lonely, for the desperate and the hungry? Down for the count, I'm hearing you now, for the faithful, the believer, for the faithless and the teacher. Stand up and be proud. What about now? You want to start a fight? You got to take the swing. Got to get your hands in the dirt to see what the harvest will bring. You want to raise your voice? Don't be scared to breathe. Don't be afraid to hurt. Don't be ashamed in need, because tonight you're alive. Who will stand for the less restless and the lonely, for the desperate and the hungry? Down for the count, I'm hearing you now, for the faithful, the believer, for the faithless and the teacher. Stand up and be proud. What about now? believe for that reason the dream through the seasons, till dreams are just a fade and grade, and all of your plans that slip through your hands are the dreams that you will take to your grave. Tonight you're alive. There you go.
That's it. That's the song. Tonight you're alive. So stand up, be proud, do it, make it happen. Humanity, this is our moment. Look, if we can't get this together, I don't even want to complete that sentence, but I'll tell you what they say in El Salvador. El que por su gusto se muere, que lo entierren parado. Can I translate that, Maida? In El Salvador, they say, he who dies for his own pleasure, smoking, drinking, doing drugs, whatever, right? He who dies for his own pleasure, bury him standing up. Just dig a hole and stuff him in there, feet first, right? In other words, he's not worth digging a proper grave for, right? So it's like, if we're the species who dies for our own pleasure, our own addictions, and we don't do the right thing, how much mercy can we expect? We need to earn it. We need to do the right thing right now. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, that everything that you're saying is fantastic. It's all good, and the celebrities are a great way of getting the message out there, obviously, and there's been a lot, as I said, trying to do it and everything else, and they'll definitely get on board when they see this taking fruition, as I said. But all the conversations, I'm speaking now to Alessandro here as well, and in particular, because he's representing the youth here now at the moment. So all the conversations that took place here now tonight, or since this conversation started today, and the same last week and the week before, are just the premise to achieving something that we were warned about, or told or advised to do anyway. So if you have 4 minutes, I don't want to talk now for 4 minutes, but I would like to show you, and you can listen to something for 4 minutes, and I think this person says it all, from what we're all talking about trying to achieve and why we need to achieve it. And it's actually it's an art piece that I made. It's a 3D art piece that I made, because, as I said, my art is based on more or less a lot of this, our cultures and where we come from and where we're going. But I did this for my my final exams for my degree, and I tried to prove a point with my art, and let get the message about where we come from, how far we've come from the primitive, working with primitive tools like flint knapping, which was the skill I used and incorporated in making the 3D sculpture that I'll show you here now in a second. Now I emphasize this is not about my art, other than the premise behind my art, which is to try and draw people's attention to the to all cultures and to the predicament that we face. But if I just show you, if it's okay, is it all right, Jimin? Yeah. So if I'm going to have to move my camera here in a sec, but I'll just put it on, and look, you can make your minds up for yourself. But if I think it'll say itself, or speak for itself, should I say? So I'm just going to move this around here. Okay. Okay. I think I'm about there now, but I'll have to take that off. Whoops. So I don't know. Can you see this here?
Yeah, that's amazing. Tell us about
Okay,
it.
one sec. I don't know. Okay, this is a piece of art that I made, as I said, for my degree show, and it's called Metatron's Cube. And basically, Metatron's Cube is a geometrical the premise between, or the geometrical shape that contains, it actually contains all the sacred geometrical shapes within it, and all life on Earth, everything that exists, including sound, is made up from this one prime shape, and it's the building block then for all life is attached to that. It's the fundamental shape, and the geometric sacred geometry comes from this, from Metatron's cube. So basically, I'm showing how far we've come with our technologies by using and implementing the most ancient of crafts to build a piece. So I flint knapped the whole lot of it from waste bottles, glass bottles, using the bases of the bottles and the necks of the bottles. I flint knapped them down into shape and pieced them all together. And then I housed them in this unit that I made, which is called an infinity cube. So with that anyway, that's the explanation. I'll just give you a little closer look at the, one second, I have a bit of problem with the lead. Yeah, the cube, it's kind of three-dimensional. I'm not sure now. The best way I could do this, sorry no. The cat is standing on my wire. So, yeah. The cube is, I'm going to have to do this, sorry. Right, I won't go into the detail with that at the moment, but you could see it, and I'll just
That's really cool. Wow. It's like a hologram.
Wow.
From theoretical physics, I had questions. But there are other challenges, other big questions which must be answered, and these will also need a new generation who are interested, engaged, and with an understanding of science. How will we feed an ever-growing population, provide clean water, generate renewable energy, prevent and cure disease, slow down global climate change? I hope that science and technology will provide the answers to these questions, but it will take people, human beings with knowledge and understanding, to implement these solutions. One of the great revelations of the space age has been the perspective it has given humanity on ourselves. When we see the Earth from space, we see ourselves as a whole. We see the unity, but not the divisions. It is such a simple image, with a compelling message: one planet, one human race. We are here together, but we need to live together with tolerance and respect. We must become global citizens. I have been enormously privileged, through my work, to be able to contribute to our understanding of the universe. But it would be an empty universe indeed if it were not for the people I love and who love me. We are all time travelers journeying together into the future. But let us work together to make that future a place we want to visit. Be brave, be determined, overcome the odds. It can be done. There are many ambitions, positions of billions of galaxies, and we will better understand our place in the universe. But we must also continue to go into space for the future of humanity. I don't think we will survive another 1,000 years without escaping beyond our fragile planet. It has been a glorious time to be alive, doing research in theoretical physics. The fact that we humans, who are ourselves mere collections of fundamental particles of nature, have been able to come this close to an understanding of the laws governing us and our universe is a great triumph, and I'm happy if I have made a small contribution. I want to share my excitement and enthusiasm about this quest. So remember to look up at the stars and not up at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist. Be curious, and however difficult life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at. It matters that you don't just give up. While there's life, there is hope.
Ah, beautiful, James.
Thank you.
Sorry. Is that a drawing or what, how did you did that? That is amazing. It's like a blood cell, no? From what I see.
Yes, it's a 3D sculpture, which I made from waste broken bottles, and I used the bases of the bottles and the necks of the bottles, and I flint knapped them using the most ancient technology that was available to man. And I flint knapped them into the shapes, and then put them together onto a backing mirror, and then housed them inside a casing with a two-way mirror in front of it, which allows the light in. But again, like our overheating problem, it allows the light in, and you see the object, and you see its reflection and reflection and reflection and reflection on itself, like exponential growth. It doubles itself over and over again. Yeah, it's like a DNA cell, is right, because it's also based on DNA as well, because it's also, as I said, within Metatron's cube, we have all the sacred geometric shapes that we base all of our building blocks in life on. But we're kind of unaware of most people are unaware of Metatron's cube as such, but that is the one shape that houses all of our geometric shapes, our sacred geometry, and therefore none of those would exist without being within that together. So it's the building block of all life, and so yes, it's the building block of genes, and right down into the finer details of life. It's the fundamental building block of life, including sound and everything else. And it's an example of where we come in life as a species, and from where we've come. So basically, that's it. Like,
Wow. Does the narration that we were hearing, is that coming from the box too? Is it like speaking to us? Do you push a button or something?
Yeah,
Wow.
I attached a speaker system, and that particular message I got from, just in case it's anyone's worrying, it was from copyright free downloads that I was able to get those, and I took those particular parts that he said out of two speeches that I heard him giving, Mr. Stephen Hawking give online before, prior to his demise, and I was inspired by his speeches, and I was inspired. It was part of my, as I said, my artwork was based. My thesis was based on my artwork, and they're all connected. So yeah. So and again, no, I'm not trying to just show the artwork. It was about getting the message there. Like, so as I said, that message was part of the art. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
we understand completely your point. It is an amazing. Oh my God, I'm so surprised. You're a genius. It's amazing because I was putting attention to the blood cell itself, kind of DNA maybe also.
Mhm.
And it's amazing because it has almost the same shape as the bacteria. And we know that we come from bacteria. Like, this is how humanity started.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It is like, it's like the everything in one. This is why I'm not different than you, you're not different than me. It's only what we touch, the physical body. Other than that, we're all the same.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's the information that has all the information. I'm gonna put it like that, but oh my God, you're a genius. Congratulations. It's an
Thank you
amazing,
very much.
amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It was making me think of, I don't know whether it was Voyager, one of those space missions, unmanned space missions that was launched a long time ago. The United States launched Voyager, and they put on board that Voyager some inscriptions of like was it Leonardo da Vinci? And I think there was even a recording, and it was sort of making me think of that. And it's like your art piece should be put on a rocket and sent into deep space as a message to other possible worlds out there that we're here. So you got to get that over to NASA or to the, I guess you got the European Space Agency too. Get that fired up there.
Yeah. As I said, it was just a piece I made for my final exams. It's now standing in my sitting room as part of my Photoshop, basically. Like, so.
Alessandro, he probably wants to tell you something about it too.
No, yeah, it's quite amazing. I like the structure, how
Thank
it's
you very-
so artistic. That is such an art piece.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. Yeah, but what did you think of the message? Did you hear it all? Did you hear it, everything that came out from the speaker? I wasn't sure because I got disconnected from my own mic.
You go in and out.
All right.
Yeah.
That was my fault there. When I was trying to move the wires, it got caught on something and pulled out, and my earphones came out as well, including the mic. So I didn't even realize it was over here while it was playing. So you might have missed a bit of the start of it. So, you know, I should have.
Was that you reading and sounding like Stephen Hawking, or was that actual Stephen Hawking speaking?
Well, they're downloaded. Yes, it's Stephen Hawking's excerpts from some of two of his speeches that he gave, and one of them was his final message to humanity. So there's no copyright infringement. It was free on copyright free on online anyway, because it is his final message to humanity. You know, so I use part of that.
Talking about final messages to humanity, we should play President Dwight D. Eisenhower's farewell speech. I wouldn't imagine anybody would give copyright problems over playing a speech provided by the president. But that's a powerful message. See if I can bring it up.
Oh, extremely powerful. And, you know, obviously we didn't get the message. Right? We as the American people. What Miles is talking about, Miles, if it's okay with you, I'll just paraphrase it. The speech. So this was a few years after the end of World War II, and Eisenhower, when he was just about to leave the office of president, he'd been there for 8 years, and he was making his farewell speech. He said to the American people, "Beware the power of the military-industrial complex."
Good evening, my fellow Americans. First, I should like to express my gratitude to the radio and television networks for the opportunities they have given me over the years to bring reports and messages to our nation. My special thanks go to them for the opportunity of addressing you this evening. 3 days from now, after half a century in the service of our country, I shall lay down the responsibilities of office as, in traditional and solemn ceremony, the authority of the presidency is vested in my successor. This evening, I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. Like every other citizen, I wish the new president and all who will labor with him Godspeed. I pray that the coming years will be blessed with peace and prosperity for all. Our people expect their president and the Congress to find essential agreement on issues of great moment, the wise resolution of which will better shape the future of the nation. My own relations with the Congress, which began on a remote and tenuous basis, when long ago a member of the Senate appointed me to West Point, have since ranged to the intimate during the war and immediate post-war period, and finally to the mutually interdependent during these past 8 years. In this final relationship, the Congress and the administration have, on most vital issues, cooperated well to serve the nation good rather than mere partisanship, and so have assured that the business of the nation should go forward. So my official relationship with the Congress ends in a feeling, on my part, of gratitude that we have been able to do so much together. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. 3 of these involved our own country. Despite these holocausts, America is today the strongest, the most influential, and most productive nation in the world. Understandably proud of this preeminence, we yet realize that America's leadership and prestige depend not merely upon our unmatched material progress, riches, and military strength, but on how we use our power in the interest of world peace and human betterment. Throughout America's adventure in free government, our basic purposes have been to keep the peace, to foster progress in human achievement, and to enhance liberty, dignity, and integrity among peoples and among nations. To strive for less would be unworthy of a free and religious people. Any failure traceable to arrogance or our lack of comprehension or readiness to sacrifice would inflict upon us grievous hurt, both at home and abroad. Progress toward these noble goals is persistently threatened by the conflict now engulfing the world. It commands our whole attention, absorbs our very beings. We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Unhappily, the danger it poses promises to be of indefinite duration. To meet it successfully, there is call for not so much the emotional and transitory sacrifices of crisis, but rather those which enable us to carry forward steadily, surely, and without complaint, the burdens of a prolonged and complex struggle with liberty, the state. Only thus shall we remain, despite every provocation, on our charted course toward permanent peace and human betterment. Crises there will continue to be. In meeting them, whether foreign or domestic, great or small, there is a recurring temptation to feel that some spectacular and costly action could become the miraculous solution to all current difficulties. A huge increase in newer elements of our defense.
Hey, Miles.
Development of unrealistic programs secure every year.
Miles, I'm gonna. It's just getting a bit long.
You got 24 hours, so. But anyway, the key is where he goes on to talk about the military-industrial complex, and that we have to be alert. And well, I'm in Canada, but still, it's a message for everybody. You have to be alert, knowledgeable citizens. So, government, he wasn't perfect, but he was one heck of a leader. The only thing I've ever heard somewhat diminishing of his reputation was that it was under him that the approval for the Atoms for Peace campaign was started in the 50s, which was the concept of let's build nuclear power plants for electricity, which was a terrible idea. But again, he specifically warns for everybody to be aware of the growing military-industrial complex.
Yeah, exactly. And look at how well we've heeded that warning as a country. Not at all. That was 60 years ago, and we're still spending something like $1 trillion a year on military. I mean, just absurd. And that's because a relatively small number of very greedy individuals are making gobs of money that they don't need. But like any addiction, they just can't stop. It's got control over them. So, I mean, as a society, a global society, as well as a country, the United States, we've just been destroying ourselves in so many ways. It's just like this house of horrors, right? The world has become a house of horrors. And, you know, part of what makes all of this so confusing is that it is such a gigantic and complex house of horrors. There are so many problems. It's like we don't even know where to begin, right? And so many of us just escape, just put it out of our minds. Don't even think about it. I can't influence all that, right? So
the key, though, is to use that speech for inspiration. You know, because if anybody says, well, by what authority are you challenging the business as usual model? Well, you pull up that speech, you'll never have more inspirational words than that from President Dwight D. Eisenhower. He's basically from his grave, and now in YouTube, he lives on, and he can still inspire people to say, hey, there was a president, 1961, said, people, be aware, watch out. You got to be alert, you have to be knowledgeable, and you have to be citizens. That means you have to direct Congress. You have to direct the president. But we haven't been doing that. So we don't, you know, we can't really blame anybody else. It's our lack of action. Like, that's obedience, though. It's not civil disobedience, what I'm talking about. It's actually obedience to the values that he talks about.
Well, it's interesting. He's calling upon individuals to be responsible, to be informed, etc. I think the updated message for today, 60 years later, is not for the individual Miles, the individual Jamin, the individual Les, the individual Alessandro, but the message is to all of us as a whole, humanity. Wake up and get with it and do what you need to do, or you're going to die, all of you. That's just the reality. That's what's at stake here. And I don't say that to make Alessandro feel badly, but that is literally what is at stake here, right? Alessandro, if you don't clean up your room this weekend, you're not going to die, okay? If we don't clean up this mess, we all die. It's a really big deal. Les, you got your hand up. Go ahead, Les.
Individually we die, everything goes down the tubes. And one thing that we're going to end up facing is our intelligence. It's going to be, it's really going to have extreme capability in the future. It already has a lot, but we're going to reach where artificial intelligence will be able to make an image of you or me and put words in our mouth that we're not even saying. And it won't be distinguishable. Talking about faking out, you know, the population. Artificial intelligence will be able to deceive people to an extent that's just truly unbelievable.
Right.
In fact, it'll mean that, you know, like, video won't be a reliable way to know if something's happening or not, because our AI will be able to mimic reality so closely that you won't be the average person, or actually it'd probably take artificial intelligence if it was faked or not, and even that might be defeated.
Hey, Les, you're kind of breaking up pretty bad. So I think we got the gist of what you're saying about what AI is going to be able to do in the future. But just as a tip, when you talk next, you might want to turn off your camera so that your bandwidth gets channeled through the audio and we can hear you better. But, you know, look, here's the thing. There's a lot of speculation about AI and this and that. If you consider collective superintelligence as, I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Les. I get a little feedback. If you, all right, what's going on there? Okay, great. Thanks, Les. Thank you. So if you think about collective superintelligence, the way we've been framing it, it is a mashup between, oh, and by the way, welcome back, Dylan. Good to see you. Must be pretty late for you there. Enjoying
the conversation.
Awesome. Good. Glad to hear it. And jump in whenever you feel like it. Collective superintelligence, as we're creating it here, is a mashup between artificial intelligence and collective human intelligence. And it's really that magical combination that will, that defines collective superintelligence. So from that framing, it's like, let me just make a really simple example. If I say, hey, what weighs more, 20 oranges or a watermelon? You won't know. But if I say, what weighs more, a watermelon or a watermelon plus 20 oranges? Well, duh, a watermelon plus 20 oranges weighs more. What's my point? AI, yes, it's going to be super powerful, but AI with the collective intelligence of humanity mashed up with it is going to be way more powerful than AI alone. And that, in a nutshell, is why I'm not afraid of bad AI, because collective superintelligence will always be orders of magnitude ahead of it. We will run circles around AI. We will use AI, and the mashup between collective human intelligence and AI is going to be way more powerful than AI will ever be. It's as simple as that. So I look at AI as way more as our friend than as our enemy. But if we humans don't get our act together and manifest collective superintelligence, then AI will run circles around us. Mayra, you got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm gonna just head out. But I'll see you around next Friday, maybe.
Yeah, look forward to it. Great to see you, Alessandro.
All right.
Thank
Later,
you.
man.
Thank you so much for hanging with us. It's been super cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Have a good night.
All right. Take care.
Okay, he's taking off to sleep, but as usual, I'm gonna stay here and see until what time I'll go to sleep. I'll probably fall asleep with you guys.
Very good. Just like the last two Fridays. Awesome, Mayra. Thank you. Yeah, you know, it's kind of it's kind of this just insane. Like, if we don't put it together, what a tragedy. Here we are, steps away from manifesting collective superintelligence with which we can crank out all the solutions that we need. What's holding us back? What is holding us back? We need more people. Think of it this way. And you could ask, well, how many people do we need to really make this thing compelling? I'm going to put it in the following terms. We need on the order of 1,000 people. Why do I say that? If we have about 1,000 people, that'll mean that we'll have a few dozen who will be computer programmers, coders. And once we have a few dozen coders on the team, we'll be able to do a weekend hackathon and get this whole thing coded up. It's not that hard. Because what we're really doing is we're cobbling together, we're assembling different web services that already exist and are already super stable. And we just need to create the connective tissue between them. What am I talking about? This Zoom video conference, we're using Zoom, right? Right now we're using Zoom mashed up with email, mashed up with website, right? Email and website are relatively simple technologies at this point. Zoom is pretty sophisticated. We're going to now mash up Zoom with the AI needed to transcribe it, with the AI needed to index the transcription, and with all the technologies that we'll need for people to find those conversations they're looking for. It uses search as a starting point, but it layers on top of it all other kinds of stuff. None of this is hard. In fact, most of this can be handled with some really good database design and really creative usage of the existing web services that are already so powerful and so ubiquitous, including many kinds of social media, from Facebook to Reddit to Twitter to you name it. Other great systems like GitHub for open source software development, Brainswarming, which I mentioned last week. There's so many really solid services that are either free or freemium and ready to go. We just need to connect these Lego blocks together with a really smart design. And that's another reason why we need a whole bunch of people here, so that we can do the design that we really need to get done. And then once we have a solid platform for collective superintelligence and 1,000 of us, and the platform is really cool, and the 1,000 of us organize ourselves in, several dozen or a couple hundred different conversations, ongoing conversations, now we've got a critical mass of people and conversations and software connecting it all together, and it'll start working. And once it starts working, oh my goodness, our numbers will multiply so quickly. So right now, we're kind of like the early pioneers on some wagon train headed west, right? That, it's a little bit slow going right now is how it feels to me. And I just can't wait for this thing to take off. So
it's like becoming one decentralized mind.
Exactly. And
but emotional. And, AI is not emotional, but it will be an emotional mind, on every time zone, at least focused on the problems, never sleeping in a way.
Exactly. And at any given moment, there'll be, 3 billion people who are available to get tapped, right? And if everybody gets it and everybody plays and everybody plugs in, oh my goodness, we'll have 7.5 billion people ready to talk with each other and figure out whatever needs to be figured out. Whatever needs to be figured out, it's not that there's one person out there who has the answer. There is one virtual team. There is one set of human beings who put us together and we'll figure it out. No matter what the problem, there's a set of human beings who can figure it out to the extent that it can be figured out. And it may take them a few hours, right? As I was talking about a little bit earlier, Les, I know you got your hand up, so I'll get to you in a sec. But like we were talking about earlier, the toughest problems I think that we have are not technical. They're human. How do we get human beings to come together and work together and cooperate and say yes to this new medium, say yes to the promise of collective superintelligence, and say, yeah, I want to be a part of that, and say yes to the challenge of cooling the planet using collective superintelligence, right? That's our biggest challenge right now. The good news is I think we can solve it. I think the people in this room can solve it. So let's do it. I've got all night.
Right on, Jamin. Right on, Jamin. Yeah. Hey, aloha, brother. Hey, just wanted to say, Miles with his great reporting from earlier today, going out on the street reporter with the group out there that he found that were that was just that. It's just that type of personality that can take us forward.
Extinction Rebellion.
Sorry, Dylan?
Extinction Rebellion rally, right?
That's right. That's what it was. Yes, thank you.
I'm glad you mentioned Extinction Rebellion, because what great recruiting ground for us. These are people who already get the problem, right? So half the battle is solved. Now we just
there's 1 million of them around the world.
Well, hey,
You know,
I'll take them.
right?
Right.
No story barrier, right?
Oh,
Pretty unified there.
no story.
Very true.
But, you know, at least they're on the court playing. Now they're playing by throwing their bodies in front of trains. What we need them to do is plug their minds into here, and then we'll be set. Seriously.
Yes.
One block party with Greta would do it.
Totally. We need exactly right. We need Greta to come to the block party.
Just once.
Just once.
Just once. We get so many views, you know, even that.
Well, we get so many people.
You know. Oh my gosh, it would be maxed out. It would, you know, it would be. You know, your friend should definitely do the introduction. I forgot who you mentioned, but you had a friend that knew her.
Oh, Stuart.
From Hawaii as well.
Yeah, totally. Stuart Scott. We gotta
Yeah.
get in touch with Stuart.
We got to get Nick. Nick, you got to meet him.
Shoots, can.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know where he is.
Nick,
Maybe Honolulu.
Nick
We're
is
lucky.
our last line of defense. What island are you on, Nick?
Yeah, right on town in Honolulu.
All right. The quiet little sleeping village, the quiet little fishing village of Honolulu. Yeah, I think Stuart's on Oahu, so that's half the battle. You're on the right island.
All right, that's good. Definitely good times.
All right, and Les, you've had your hand up. Thanks for your patience, Les. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. I'm having the problem with the video lagging too, with you when you're on. So I don't know. I have a like gigabit internet, so but I'm kind of away from the server. So if I was closer to the server, it would work better probably. I don't know if it's on my end or whatever, but having on or yeah, I heard you guys talking earlier about getting the celebrities on. That sounds like a very interesting idea. And I'm not sure how how to recruit people like that. But you guys probably talked about that too.
Yeah, we're working on it. I think the short answer is just keep doing what we're doing. Just keep growing our numbers organically. And the law of large numbers dictates that by the time we get to 100 people, you know, a couple of us are going to know some celebrities. Right? So.
Exactly.
Yeah. And in the meantime, we just got to get creative about who we do know so that we can invite them so that one of them will know a celebrity. We just got to keep at it. It's as simple as that. And it's not like we don't have the motivation. This is about saving all of our lives and all of our families and friends and all of their descendants and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the stakes could not possibly be higher. And, you know, good old repetition. So be it. Let's keep beating the drum and let's keep sharpening our own spear tip, sharpening our own mantra, right? Hey, Jamin, where were you Friday night when I tried to call? Well, I was doing this, and here's what it is. Here's what we're doing, right? I started to take some notes earlier about what our mantra could look like or what our, you know, our story, our rallying cry, whatever, but just really boiled down. And the story would be, number one, yes, we can. Yes, we can solve our most daunting problems, including abrupt climate change. And number two, there's a group that's doing it, right? Imagine we're talking to somebody, we're saying, there's a group that's doing it, that's out solving our most daunting problems in a very systematic way, developing the solutions, recruiting the people, mapping out the way forward. And waking up humanity to these truths that there are solutions, and there's a group that's creating these solutions, and ultimately inviting all of humanity to participate in creating this new story for humanity and this new path forward. No longer the default path of, well, let's just sit back and watch what these humans do as they chop down the very last tree and kill the last fish. No, that was the default path that we were on for decades. We're finally taking control of the steering wheel of Spaceship Earth, and we're going to steer ourselves to safety. That's the story. Oh, and by the way, if you want to help, because you might just make all the difference. We're that close to imminent extinction that your help might make all the difference. How about it? You want to help? Or do you want to go to your grave knowing that by your inaction, everybody and everything died? That's quite a load to take to your grave, I think. I wouldn't want to take that to my grave. Les, you got your hand up, buddy. Go ahead.
Let me know if I'm breaking up.
You're breaking up.
So
I'd turn off your video.
Okay. All right. Well, as far as are you familiar with the technological singularity, Jeremy?
Oh yeah. The singularity is here. I've met Ray Kurzweil, had a good conversation with him about it. It's good stuff.
Right. Well, anyway, I mean, I'm not so sure a technological singularity would be really, it wouldn't necessarily be a pleasant thing for a lot of people. It depends on what happens, because what's happening with exponential technological growth is that more and more energy and resources are going into building computational devices. And humans actually take away from the ability. I mean, humans use a lot of resources that could be used for building better AI and more technological innovation, especially as technology gets more and more sophisticated. So, like, humans aren't actually in the future, humans are going to be a very small factor in making technological growth grow, because AI will be the main factor involved. And so eliminating the human use of resources would actually spur technological growth.
Sure. And, you know, these are interesting conversations. But I can't see a single consideration in everything that you just said that would make me reverse my fundamental thesis that we must come together as quickly as possible and use the technologies that we have to manifest collective superintelligence to cool the planet in time. And for me, right now, that's the only game in town. Because if we do it successfully, we get to live and solve the rest of our problems. If we fail at cooling the planet, we all die, and everything else is moot, including all the speculations that you just said. And I'm being a little bit of a stickler. I don't think I'm being a jerk or worse, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. but I am being a stickler. Why am I being a stickler? Because the fact that we haven't focused on this as a species up until now is what's gotten us a few steps away from death. And I'm not willing to, divert focus and just, we've got to stay on it. We've got to stay right on top of this, right? Even if we didn't make another chip, didn't make another computer, I don't care. We've got all the computational capacity we need right now to make this happen. I mean, our biggest technological problem right now is you're too far from your router, Les. That's it. All right, we've got a comment. Imri, we're all going to live in a yellow submarine. Thank you, Imri. And Les, you got your hand up. Go ahead, Les.
Oh, let me change my position. Maybe that'll help.
Okay, Les, do you know that you're on mute?
Yeah. Oh, just a minute. I've got some other things I need to do.
Okay, no problem.
So while you're waiting for Les, again, I know that for some people it's not necessarily going to make a lot of sense what I'm going to say, because people would say, well, what are you so concerned about that for? We've got an emergency kind of thing happening. But, this is where everybody has to do what they think is right, no matter what anybody else thinks of it. So, as I've said in the past, as everybody knows, I'm very interested in seeing how we can incorporate indigenous wisdom into our governance. So I have this book titled The True Spirit and Original Intent of Treaty 7. Now, one of the obligations we have to the First Nations people is this. So this paragraph starts with, to have and to hold the same to Her Majesty the Queen and her successors forever. And Her Majesty the Queen hereby agrees with her said Indians that they shall have the right to pursue their vocations of hunting throughout the tract surrendered as heretofore described, subject to such regulations as may from time to time be made by the government of the country acting under the authority of Her Majesty. So what I just read is, and I know this will upset the vegans, it'll upset the vegans, but the First Nations where I live are supposed to be able to go hunting wherever they want. Well, how are they going to go hunting if there's no wild animals left? So I'm saying that everybody else, all of us invaders, settlers, whatever we want to call ourselves, we have to go vegan. We have to create the edible forests that Jorge and Sylvie talked about, these edible forests everywhere. In order for them, the First Nations, to be able to hunt in their traditional ways. So in other words, I would say that you could probably get them to agree that they shouldn't be using the latest 303 or whatever gun is out there that hunters are using these days. But if they were to go back to their traditional ways of hunting, the rest of us, all others, have to be vegan. Anyway, that's one of the things I'm promoting.
I totally agree with that, and I also totally agree with your statement about indigenous wisdom. We, the invaders, are part of a malignant culture, like a cancerous culture, right? The indigenous peoples lived in harmony and long-term sustainability with their environments. They were part of nature. They were not separate from nature. So we urgently need indigenous wisdom. I mean, in part, these meetings were inspired by the indigenous gatherings that just go on late into the night until everyone has said everything they need to say, right? They don't have 1 hour meetings or 2 hour meetings. They go much longer. So this is just an example of the power of that wisdom, if that's a fair statement. Yes.
And I'm just jumping in here. I don't know. I don't have the context before, but one of the things that inspires me when it comes to reintegrating modern civilization with Mother Earth and with nature is seeing, I can't remember her name, but she leads a group in the MIT Media Lab, I think like today, now. And she has an entire episode on this TV series called Abstract: The Art of Design on Netflix. And part of her work is working with natural substances and even creatures. In one case, she used a bunch of caterpillars on this like essentially a skeleton, and then the caterpillars weaved this like fabric and like created this thing, but she basically used the caterpillars. And I don't know, I really like this idea of communing with nature and coming back to nature, but not strictly in a let's be as hands off as possible and let nature do its thing kind of way. There are some ways in which we need to take on more of that attitude and step back. But we're also in this very interesting time of being designers of our environments and managing environments, like in like the case Alan Savory makes, I think essentially boils down to, if we don't help the animals and play some shepherding role, then we're doing a disservice to the entire ecosystem. And that actually we need to play some we need to interfere somehow, but interference doesn't have to be destructive. And so like starting to think about all of these different ways, especially scientists are discovering how to use like creating like biochemical robots, that kind of thing, where they're able to like manufacture an organism, but that like behaves in a predictable way and like moves in a certain pattern. I saw this thing within like the past month. I mean, that's just like so sci-fi. And I don't know. I think that we have to simultaneously stop the destructive interference patterns that we're becoming very self-aware of now, or native peoples, for example, have been more aware of for quite some time, and also integrate that with with still invasive but necessary and healthy ways of designing our environment, SRM being one example. That's all I gotta say.
Beautiful, beautiful. Les, I know you've had your hand up, but I'm gonna ask Dylan to go next because he has someone to introduce, but I won't forget about you, Les. Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, thank you, Jamin. Oh, I'd like to introduce Guy Lane to our circle. He actually does the Planet Report, and he's also the founder and leader of Perium, the Perium group, especially on Facebook. He's from Australia, and he's very heavily involved with Extinction Rebellion, a lot of great people that he's actually interviewing on his podcast on YouTube. So he's just a very well-connected person that's focused heavily on abrupt climate change and solutions. And he definitely offers some great sense of reality of our situation. So welcome, Guy. I mean, yeah, welcome.
Welcome, Guy. Welcome.
Aloha, brother.
Aloha. Guy, you're muted. You're muted, Guy. You gotta unmute your microphone there. Yeah, just a little toggle. There you go.
How about that?
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Welcome.
Hi guys. Thanks very much for this. I'm just actually in a few minutes on my way out of the building, but I've just got an idea I just want to share in the frame of reference of solar radiation management. Okay. So so one of the little things that I've put out in the past was like a little meditation called Plankton Meditation. If you go onto YouTube and Google Plankton Meditation, it's like a guided meditation. But in there, I talk about how plankton produce dimethyl sulfide, which is a gas which produces, is basically a cloud nucleating agent. Okay, and so basically one of the roles, and Gaia theory talks about this a lot. So James Lovelock and Gaia theory uses this as one of his key sort of explainers about how nature helps to self-regulate the planet's temperature. And so basically, if you've got a lot of phytoplankton, they produce this gas called DMS. The gas is very volatile, it goes into the air, it breaks down in sunlight to produce a sulfur molecule, and the sulfur molecule is a cloud nucleating agent. It's the little dot upon which the water droplets form. So if you can foster the growth of plankton, you can actually foster the growth of marine clouds, and marine clouds, of course, reflect sunlight back into space, and as well as, you know, doing other things like raining. So there is a technology that you may have heard of called marine permaculture, which has been spearheaded by a guy called Brian von Hertzen, who's in America. And what he's doing is creating these, going into parts of the ocean where there is a very small amount of life because it's limited by nutrients. And he's putting in a device called an upwelling pump, which is basically a wave-powered pump that moves water from a few hundred meters deep to the surface, because a few hundred meters down, there's actually quite a lot of nutrient down there, but there's no light. So you're not going to get the photosynthesis. But if you can bring the water from depth up to the surface using this wave-powered pump, you can then bring the nutrient to the surface, kick off a phytoplankton bloom. And if you put infrastructure in this plume, you'll not only create all of the microplankton, microalgae, you'll also be able to grow macroalgae, which creates an economic resource. You can grow seaweeds. And so I'm sort of, I've met Brian a few times, and I've spoken to him at length about this technology. But when I hear conversations about solar radiation management, and then I hear ideas about, putting stuff in, in the atmosphere, chemicals and stuff, I'm thinking that if we could focus on something like the marine permaculture as a way of stimulating exactly the same effect, then you not only get to enhance nature, but you actually get an economic benefit, because you get these seaweed farms and all of the little fish that grow and the big fish that eat them, and create an economic structure that then effectively helps to pay for itself. And about half of the surface of the entire planet is oligotrophic seawater, which means water that's depleted of nutrient, which is potentially suitable for this technology. So it could potentially be absolutely massive.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I'm going to share the screen for a second and just show you a couple of pictures. Stand by.
And Guy, you know about the mirror project that I posted on your group?
Yeah, I saw it. I didn't get around to watching. Actually, I watched a bit of the video. So it's something to do with putting mirrors on the surface.
I thought it
of the
could be
ocean.
combined with your technology there.
Well, yeah, possibly. I mean, this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
this diagram that I'm showing here. Can you see the screen? Is it shared?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So at the top, so I just went to Google Images and Googled marine permaculture. But basically, what this is showing is the actual raft upon which all of that. So basically, you're under the water, and that green patchy thing is basically the kelp which is growing up from this substrate that has been placed in the water. There's a string you can see vertically goes up to the top where it's connected to like a float, and then down the bottom you've got like the actuator that basically moves the water. The water would come up that diagonal line. This is the nutrient-rich water, which would then basically produce this nutrient base for the growth of the macroalgae, but also the phytoplankton. And these things would float below the surface, and eventually the kelp would grow up to the top, and then you'd be able to raise and lower the raft to harvest it. And some of these kelps, or some of these seaweed types have got a very high carbon ratio. So you've got this thing called the Redfield ratio, which is the ratio in most organisms of nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon. But some of these seaweeds have got very, very high carbon concentrations, which means that if you grow them, you could potentially be sequestering tons of carbon out of the atmosphere. And one of the ideas is that if you do this in the open ocean, you just grow it, and then cut it and let it sink to the seafloor, kilometers down. And by the time it goes a few hundred meters or 1,000 meters down into the sea, it's effectively taken that carbon out of the atmosphere. So here is a technology platform that uses nature's existing tools to achieve this outcome we want, which is to reduce the sunlight coming in, as well as sequestering CO2 out of the atmosphere, and plus producing a lot of seafood.
Brilliant. I love it. This is exactly the kind of holistic solution that we need.
Yeah.
And this is, go ahead, Guy.
So the spearhead behind this is, his name is Brian von Herzen. As I say, I'm not actively involved in this, but as I learn more about it, I just promote it, and I've got some plans in place to hopefully be involved and help fund and create some of these things, because I can see this as one of the big pathways of getting lots and lots and lots of wins for the dollar that you put down on the table, as opposed to some projects you're just going to get one kind of direct outcome. And it's that multifunctionality, and particularly the idea of partnering with the natural living systems, which I think is really the pathway. And this is under the framework called ecological civilization, or Gaia 2.0. It's this idea that if you apply the brains of the humans to the existing systems that we've got, living systems, then you can get this synergistic outcome. And that's really the pathway that we need to be going down.
Brilliant. And then to bump that up a notch, rather than just apply minds of humans, apply collective super intelligence, which is a mashup of collective human intelligence with AI. And et cetera. No, that's exactly it. You've summed it up beautifully, Guy. That's exactly it. That's it.
Yeah, good.
We've got so many tools in our toolkit just this cornucopia of tools, and we just need to have the right combination of tools. A pump, seaweed, this, that, whatever, boom, you got it.
And so imagine too, Jamin, like we have the reflection of the mirrors, and then we have the sequestering of the carbon right in the ocean, and we're rebuilding the ecosystems right underneath these installations. So it's creating permaculture and reflectivity with Ye's technology and Guy's. And we've had Guy McPherson on here a few times now, so he's really involved with this as well, with the mirrors.
Now, listen, there's a big meeting coming up in October. I just want to brief you on this. So when the Paris Agreement to reduce carbon back in 2015, well, that came through a UN body called the Framework Convention on Climate Change. And at the same time that the Framework Convention on Climate Change was created back in the Rio conference in 1992, they also created an organization called the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. So these two organizations are both conventions, so they've got similar characteristics. One focused on climate change, the other on biological diversity. Well, the Convention on Biological Diversity has its big gatherings every 2 years. And the one that's coming up in October is they're going to put together effectively like the Paris Agreement, but for biological diversity. And I've got a project I'm working on called VITA. And once we get VITA approved through the government, we've got some paperwork in at the moment, we're going to apply for observer status to try and go to this Convention of Biological Diversity, where they're basically going to draw up a plan to prevent the annihilation of wildlife over the next 30 years. And it's these sorts of projects, the Marine Permaculture Project, and potentially other things that get added on as you're describing. But I'm going to see whether it's possible to actually access some funding to help kick these sorts of things off. But that's coming up in October. It's actually planned for China, though I'm not sure China will really exist in October. So I'm expecting that they'll move it, but they'll still have the meeting, I'm sure. But they're going to basically create the document. It's like the Paris Agreement for the living planet, a 30-year plan to arrest the decline of nature over the next, by mid-century. So very exciting times. And so what the work that you guys are doing could potentially feed into that somehow.
Sure, totally. Just with the diversity of SRM solutions that we've been speculating on and exploring just in literally just the last 2 weeks, what I'm seeing now, and I made the same point to Ye Tao, Dr. Ye Tao and Guy McPherson a while back, is that we need to put together a united front of all the different individuals, groups, and methods of SRM, including the ones you just mentioned, Guy. We need to get all these together with no ego and say, look, here's our big mega Lego set. And let's not worry about whether Johnny's red piece or Sally's blue piece made it into the final Death Star. Let's just put let's bring all of our Legos over to Joey's treehouse and get to work, right? As a united front, right? And period. Because we've got two major phases to get through. We need to get humanity awakened to the urgency and the absolute necessity of SRM, number one. And then number two, we need to do it, right?
Yeah.
Both of those phases are massively facilitated by building a collective intelligence of everyone who has a favorite SRM solution, because what often happens is we gravitate to our favorite and then we become a champion of that.
So do you have that? Is there now a web page or a document or anywhere where people can throw their SRM technologies and links and documents into? Do you have that?
Not yet, but
that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think we're very close. I think we need to do it. I think
the decision was made right now.
Exactly. Your question, Guy, is yes.
Yeah, there is one. Great. Okay. Well, let me know what and I'll throw in some cogent documents on this particular subject matter. And I just want to reiterate the importance of, you know, this idea of dovetailing projects together is sometimes it can be complicated, but the more you can do with a piece of infrastructure, the more value you get and the more potential benefits and you know, income streams potentially. So that's just something to think about. This permaculture, just another thing about this marine permaculture, one of the ideas is to actually set these things, they're not, some of them are not anchored to the seafloor, they just float. And if you put them in certain parts of the ocean, they've got what they call mesoscale gyres, which is basically large ocean eddies, where if you place the thing in the middle of the eddy, then it will basically just go round and around and around in a circle. I mean, it will be obviously moving kilometers over a day. But the idea is if it sticks inside one of these gyres, then it can potentially effectively stay in the same place. Doesn't need to be anchored to the seafloor, which means you've got these vast tracts of ocean where you could just go and laden these things up. And then you just go out every now and then with a boat to go and harvest. Now, the other pathway of this as well, and this is really important, is that whenever we create a solution, we've got to be careful not to create a problem in the process of creating the solution. I mean, this is just constantly going on. So at some point, we need to get away that these devices, these floating devices, need to actually be made out of bioplastics and ideally kelp-based bioplastics. So you're actually growing the thing out there. So if the big storm comes through and then washes up this massive, great big raft of seaweed with all the you know, cables and pipes, all those cables and pipes are effectively going to be biodegradable anyway, as opposed to just being more trash in the ocean. So there's lots of opportunity here. The big concern that I've got at the moment is there doesn't seem to be vast, I mean, there are vast reservoirs of money, there's no doubt about that, but the vast reservoirs of money at the moment seem to be focused on some of the most outrageous projects like going to space and going to Mars and, you know, mega projects. So some part of this conversation would need necessarily be about how to get these things funded, you know, funding pathways. So.
Yeah, totally. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Guy, because the even broader spectrum is we need solutions in the following realms, and this is an incomplete set, but we need political solutions. Those in turn need to be powered by cultural solutions, media solutions, both traditional media, social media, alternative media, full court press. So media and culture go together. That's what drives politics. Obviously,
well, and look, I'd throw something else in there, something that actually underpins even the cultural aspect, and that is the way that we view the world spiritually dictates our worldview, that dictates our culture. So if you want to go deeper to get to the root, like the idea of the radical, then I think the lower level of the roots is probably one spiritual frame of reference to the living planet. And that's the project that I've been working on called Vita. So Vita is a religion. It's a new religion devoted to the living planet. And we've got the paperwork in with the Charity Commission right now. They sent back a list of answers. I gave them 20 pages of questions. I gave them 20 pages of answers. Hopefully within the next week or 2 weeks, we'll get the okay that we'll actually have a registered religious organization where the actual supernatural is the living planet. Vitae Planeta, we call it. So the idea that all the living things on the planet are part of a single living organism that we're all a part of. So that's another part of this equation. If we can spread an idea like that, then it helps to change the culture, which then helps to change the way that the things that people value.
Totally. Goodness. Wow. My goodness. I got two things to say. Dylan, thank you. Guy, welcome. I'm ready to get baptized. Guys,
I'll send you the link. So there's no baptism involved, but if you want to get baptized, that's fine, mate. We're pretty easygoing. It's a religion with a small r, right?
Right, totally.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'll say this as well. It spreads through parties. The idea is to spread it through parties held on the full moon. So over 3 nights, of over 3 nights a month, the moon is more than 98% full. So we regard those as the nights plural of the full moon. And so what we're encouraging people to do is to, on one of those nights, and the next one's I think 9, 10, and 11 March, is to basically get a house full of intelligent empaths and spend the evening engaged in big talk, which is exactly what we're doing now. Because these conversations that we're having about ecological civilization and solar radiation management, you can't really have them very often out in the public because people get bored. If you talk about climate change at a dinner party, you get about 4 minutes before you get asked to leave. So the idea is to try and make the nights of the full moon the safe space for people to talk about these things. And you do that by having parties, and what better way of actually, meeting people than actually literally have a party, a few drinks, whatever, and then observe the moon coming up as part of the ritual. So that's what I've been working on. I'm working on this thing over the last 3 years, but the last 4 weeks I've been focused on it, just trying to get it over the line and get this ticket from the Australian government.
Wow. So exciting. So exciting.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
The very existence of you and what you're focused on makes my case. We need to round up, if you'll permit me to say this, we need to round up the guys.
Yeah.
Guy, do you know a lot of the Extinction Rebellion kind of movement leaders, or have you interviewed a few of them?
I did a brief interview with Roger Hallam, who's the one that I follow the most. But I haven't met him and I haven't spent time with him. I went to the UK in October to participate in the rebellion in London there. And it's totally impressive what they're doing. I mean, it's, social movement. And of course, that thing only popped up in the last, it's less than 2 years old now. And so, this is the point, and this is what the scientists are saying, that this is the point where we've got to start creating and implementing these solutions. Like this year, 2020, is kind of the year when carbon is supposed to peak. And it probably will peak this year because of the coronavirus, if not because of anything else. But the question is, once the coronavirus has passed through the system, whether we just get back to our bad behavior of growing the economy based on fossil fuels. But the coronavirus actually kind of, in a way, creates a bit of a space for everyone just to take a step back and go, whoa, what the hell are we actually doing on this planet? Let's spend more time, implementing solutions as opposed to just keep doing the same old stupid thing, which is causing the problem. So very exciting times. And it's appropriate then that 2020 is the year that VITA gets its royal assent, if you like. What we specifically tried to do was to get the Charity Commission to give us the document saying that we're a registered religious organization, which would basically, it gives us a certain level of kudos, because it's easy to say that you've created a religion just because you've got a website. But if you actually get a government like the Australian government to concede to the same point, then it gives you a leg up. And that will be the ticket that we use to try and get in as observers to this convention on biological diversity later on in the year, where I think there could be billions and billions of dollars looking for a home to be deployed into projects such as the ones that we're talking about.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, so there we have it. That's my contribution to the SRM conversation.
No, that's fantastic. And I sent you we're working with Up to Give as just one of our examples of crowdfunding for some of the projects. So that SRM project's on there. I sent you the link on Facebook. And that could be a similar project portal that you might like because it's decentralized and it's all through cryptocurrency, direct contributions. And it's a nice philanthropy network effect by sharing projects with others and having everyone benefit. So it's a really great portal that could be very, very useful for like a lot of different projects that all kind of link together.
Okay. So Up to Give is basically a crowdfunding using cryptocurrency, is that right?
Yep, solely. Yep, peer-to-peer.
Right, okay, interesting.
Guy,
yeah.
Quick question. I'm not sure, maybe I heard you talking about this. I heard somebody talking about this or saw a video where there are certain places out in the ocean, in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, where there's just a real richness of sea life because of the particular swirling currents that occur. And I don't know how many of these locations there are, but are these where have you heard of these locations, and is this where these kelp forests would be?
Yeah, I think what you're
Grown.
referring to is upwellings. And so, for example, if you've got in the middle of the ocean, you've got an island group, then as the ocean current moves against the island, then the deep water will run up the slope and rise to the surface, and you'll end up with this profusion of life. So that's called an upwelling. And so and that's a well-established phenomenon. And so, for example, the huge fisheries of sardines off the west coast of South America is because of an upwelling, and there's a few of them around the place, notably. So what the proposal is with the upwelling pumps is to basically recreate that natural phenomena, but just do it with some technology, with this wave-powered pump, because basically what happens is you've got the surface water has all the sunlight coming down into it, and so all of the living organisms get in there and they chew up all of the nutrient, and then a proportion of them sink down to the seafloor, and eventually they consume all the nutrient. So a lot of the nutrient ends up deeper down. And so if you can simply move the water from the depth up to the surface, then you basically put the nutrient back in to the sunshine and then create this algae bloom. The algae bloom that you can then use to foster all sorts of different fish. You have different cages and different, mariculture. And because the ocean is so vast, and because there's opportunities of these waters are so abundant, then it's just a matter of finding the place where you can get the easiest access and, a whole bunch of parameters. But like I say, there's a fellow called Brian von Herzen, travels around the world putting these things together. He's got a project going off the coast of Western Australia, I believe. He works in Korea and Philippines, and I've helped to connect him into a project in Vanuatu, which is quite close to where I am in Australia. So the problem is, unfortunately, there's only one Brian von Herzen doing it at the moment. And what I'm sort of interested in is just trying to find a way if we can't just start scaling it up and having more operations starting to make it better.
Wow, amazing. James in Ireland has a question. Go ahead, James.
More of a hello. Thank you for your time and your participation, obviously, and for your insight. And just in relation to a lot of the things that you brought up, and in relation to, especially in relation to, efficiency and making the best use of all these technologies as efficient as we can. And so, and as Jamin was saying, there are many ideas out there, and we just need to just get them all into the pile, as you were saying, and take a look at what's the best options of the whole lot of them. So there is a lot of ideas out there. But taken from that and a lot of the questions that you had there, I think just to this conversation that's been going on since in the last 24 hours would cover a lot of your questions there as well, if you get the chance to have a look over it perhaps. And I think it will answer a lot of your questions there that you were asking and posing, because there is a vast array of subjects that we're dealing with here, and we're hoping to, So I'm just saying, I appreciate it's great that you're joining the conversation, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And
that's good.
Yeah. So
this dialogue has been going on over some hours, has it?
Yeah, we've been going for 17 hours so far. And we've got another seven more hours to go.
Because we hit every time zone, so everyone's equal.
Oh, I see. Clever. I like it. Okay. And are you recording this?
Yes, we're recording and broadcasting.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I love it. That's very clever. That's very clever indeed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. Glad to be in the team.
Pardon me?
Happy to be in the conversation.
Oh, dude, Guy, you are so welcome here. I hope you will come back.
You're in
every Friday, Saturday.
Okay.
So for you, I guess it starts late at night on night, and then
Yeah, so it's 5 p.m. on Saturday here at the moment.
yeah. Okay, so it'll go until midnight your time.
Okay.
And so that means it starts at midnight. So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
set your alarm for 11:30 p.m. Get to bed really early. And
That's not going to happen. Yeah, funny.
Yeah. You can schedule time too, Guy. Like if you had like a guest, or we do other circle groups as well. Like we have like a solutions club on Tuesdays, and that's kind of more of a focused collaboration. If we would like have one of the professors on with Dr. Tao, or we just have other spots that we can invite you, and if you had anyone you wanted to bring on board or add or contribute,
okay,
we have a much more scheduled out way we can do that.
Yeah, okay. I look more than happy to talk and do interviews and all the rest of it. I've got quite a lot of stuff that I've been working on over the years. It's all sort of, the Project Vita is just trying to actually create a brand and hopefully get it funded so that we can actually start implementing some of the suite of ideas that are already out there. Without an effective central brand, I'm finding it's, for me, I just have like a whole bunch of different things that I work on, but they need to be focused. Yeah, so that's when the legitimacy that comes from the government giving us this document is really important, and hopefully that's just a week away, so we could be in a different place pretty quickly thereafter. So
do you want to send me the website link in Facebook, and I can share it to the group chat?
Yeah, I'll do that right now.
Yep.
Yeah, this is really the channel for nonstop positivity. There's all sorts of other channels people can go to look up, all these depressing latest announcements of whatever, coronavirus and volcanoes exploding or whatever. But here we talk about the positive and solutions, and just 24 hours pretty much. Of course, we do digress every so often into the dark side.
Well, speaking of that for a moment, Guy, what's your take on just looking at the aerosol masking effect, global dimming, shutting down China's transportation networks, clearing the smog? You're seeing stars in China now. Is that the 20% tipping point? If that entire region just kind of shuts down its industrial activity, is that kind of are you looking at that?
Yeah, my reading is that the global dimming phenomena is a real phenomenon. So, but I think it's very regional. And so there's this sort of idea that if you have a shutdown over here, then all of a sudden the entire planet's just going to bounce up in temperature overnight. I think what you're going to find is that you'll find regional heating differences, okay? And obviously, because the nature of the global dimming phenomena is that you turn off the fossil fuels, that's good in the long run, but turning off the fossil fuels means you turn off the sulfur and the particles, which is bad in the short run. So you get the intermediate, the immediate effect. I just want to be really clear. I've talked to Guy McPherson on a number of times, and I've followed his work, and he was very beneficial for me back in about 2013, because he was the first person that I'd come across that was interpreting a lot of the scientific data in a different way. And so back in sort of prior to 2013, my understanding of climate change was still that it was this slow moving beast that we'd eventually be able to catch up with. And then McPherson comes along and says, no, you're reading it wrong. It's basically going to wipe us out in a decade. And that was valuable information for me, because it helped me sort of become more critical about the data. I think that if we continue to grow the global economy based on predominantly on fossil fuels and the destruction of ecosystems, then Guy McPherson is going to play out to be right. But I'm not unconvinced that we can't do some sort of a major swerve on this planet. And so I don't know if I'd say I'm optimistic. I'm sort of trying to be as pragmatic as I can, which is a certain amount of gloom about what's coming down the pipeline, irrespective. But we've got everything that we need to actually transition towards ecological civilization. We've got, for example, we know that we've got probably a couple of billion years on this planet with the sun before the sun swells up. So we've got this, what I call the long future ahead of us, which is this idea that if we can get our affairs in order, we can actually still be here hundreds of millions of years into the future. And that's my driving vision of the world. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning, is to try and figure out the pathway to achieve the ecological civilization. But now this is not just, now, you know, obviously if you talk to people who are doomers, they'll say that I'm smoking hopium and la 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 la, and that's fair, you know, they can hold that view, but that view is not very helpful to achieving ecological civilization. And this is one of the beefs I've got, if any, with McPherson's work, is he seems so absolutely sure that we're doomed, when any decent scientist would know that there's such a variability within the data that's coming, and we don't know what's going to happen. We just don't know. So to be so sure that we're all going to perish in the coming years is actually more of a psychographic, which is to say it's a way that people think, as opposed to something that is actually inherent in the data. So the psychographic that I've got is to say, even if the door's only open just a tiny fraction, even if we've only got a 0.5% chance of actually pulling ecological civilization off, then we should just focus on it and get the job done. So I'm not a doomer. I'm what I call a gloomer. A gloomer is somebody that's kind of gloomy about the future because it's going to get much worse before it gets better, but not given to think that we're all doomed and there's not really anything we should do about it apart from bitch and moan. So I'm in action every day trying to find the critical pathway to these things and just doing what I can to create projects and spread ideas. Yeah, so that's my frame on that. So as for global dimming, I think it's potentially problematical. If we turned off all the fossil fuel generators overnight, I think we'd definitely see a problem, but that's just not going to happen. So if we wind down the fossil fuel generators over the next 20 years, whilst we wind up things like the marine permaculture that produces the clouds, then that can hopefully counterbalance the loss of the dimming effect from somewhere else.
Yeah,
that's great.
You know, solar radiation management's definitely key, it seems to be, as far as the global thermostat.
Yeah.
With respect to your religion with the small r, did you call it Gaia, or what was it?
It's called Vita. Yeah. Vita. So I'll explain. So when it first started, because I wrote a blog article saying that if we had religion, we ought to have a religion devoted to Gaia. And I got contacted, I put that out on LinkedIn, and I got contacted by this guy who invited me to go to Malaysia to present on this. So I started working on like a paper, and I've just been working on it ever since. But what I realized early on was that there was a flaw in trying to use the word Gaia in this sense, because Gaia is either a god of, you know, the goddess of the earth, and this is a non-theistic religion that I'm putting together, so I don't want a god in it, or it's a scientific theory. And if it's a scientific theory, it doesn't meet the test of the Charity Commission, which is a belief in a supernatural. So I had to come up with something that was like Gaia, that was actually different. And I thought, if you actually look at Gaia theory, it says that the living organism or the biosphere behaves in the manner of a living organism. So I just said, well, let's actually have that the biosphere is a living organism, and then that sort of meets the supernatural test. And then secondly, if you actually think that the biosphere is a living organism, then the question rises, what's its taxonomic classification? What's it called? What's its binomial? If humans are Homo sapiens, then what is the name of that organism that is the living planet? So I went through this thought process and came up with the name Imperium Vitae Planeta, which is Latin for Empire of the Living Planet. And it's from that name you get Vitae Planeta, and it's from that name that you get the name Vita. And so what I've done is basically I've sort of just observed the good practices of environmentalists and sort of tried to frame some of those ideas as the practices. And so if you've got a belief in a supernatural and the practices that give effect to that belief, then that's the core of what you need to actually put forward a religious organization in Australia. And so that's what I've done. So that's why I say it's a religion with a small r. It's not proposing some great God thing, or, you know, it's basically just, you know, be a good neighbor, be a good environmentalist, have a vision, a vision for the future and have a mission for the future, and a few other bits and pieces besides. So it's not like if you were to become on board and become a Vegan, it's not like you've got to put a teapot on your head and run around, you know, burning wax or anything like that. It's basically trying to take what are existing good practices and just frame them up in a way to make it more formalized and give a name to it, really. Oh, there you go. You got it. You got it up on the
Yeah,
screen.
I just pulled it up there. Yeah.
I shared
Yeah.
it to the group. Yep.
Oh, good. Great. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, so in about, 2.5 weeks, we've got the next full moon. So I'm encouraging everybody to get a group of intelligent empaths together, break out the beers, whatever it is you do. You do a moon scoping exercise, which figure out what time the moon's coming up and where in the horizon. About half of the moon rises that I've gone to observe haven't actually been seen because of cloud cover. So, but rest assured that even though you can't see it, it's still coming up. And so that's how we're hoping to spread the idea around the planet, is just through these parties. So I'll be hosting one on the Tuesday night, which is going to be a short one because it's a school night. So a lot of my friends have got, you know, families and jobs and all the rest of it. So it won't be the crazy one like we had last full moon, which was on a Friday night, which went until about 12 o'clock the next day. Yeah. Anyway, it's good stuff.
Are you talking with that lead scientist on the is it the Climate Foundation? Is that who's doing the permaculture?
Okay, so the marine permaculture is a guy called Brian von Herzen from Climate Foundation. That's
and you've
the guy.
interviewed him, right? Did you interview him? I don't remember.
No, I didn't interview him. I've just chatted with him and I've met him once.
Oh, okay.
He came to Australia.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Yeah. Look, he's real busy running around doing stuff, but
I'm sure
he's pretty much pioneered the technology.
Do you know how much he's trying to raise to like get a what is he? Is he trying to do like a test site or a test zone or?
Yeah, I think he's got a whole bunch of things going on. So he's gone to, I think he's gone over to Korea where they've got a massive seaweed industry already, and he's helping to enhance them using some of this upwelling. The conversation I had with him about Vanuatu was the idea of trying to find, I think they wanted something in the order of $10 million US would get you a kilometer by kilometer square.
Okay,
park,
that's great.
which
Wow.
is huge, right? And
Yeah.
and so the idea is you'd find the location and then you start doing the modeling. You look at the different species that you deploy there. You look at the markets for the, you know, the organisms. You're either going to have some sort of an export market or you're going to sell them locally to the, you know, local place, and then figure out, each location would have a different sort of balance of organisms and designs. And so that's basically where, you know, that's what you do is you do a mapping project, find the location, and then just put it together. I mean, you know, if we this is the thing as well about the transition to ecological civilization. As soon as we let go of all the stupid things that we do and spend money on, as soon as we get, for example, the American government to start waking up to this stuff and putting all the resources that are available for an organization like that, vast resources, you know, we could actually have this thing underway really quickly. And that's, I think, it's an important point, is that there's so much, you know, with all the Pentecostalists thinking that we're in the end times, with all the people in the fossil fuel industry who are basically in denial because of the way that they make their money, with the doomers saying there's nothing we can do. There's only a very, very small number of people in society, proportion-wise, who are intelligent and actually seeing that it's possible to do these things. And I think this is what's valuable about a little gathering like this, is it sort of brings a few of those people together. And so we've really just got to find a way to break out, you know. And the thing that we've got on our side is that it is so inherently scientifically validated that what we're saying is actually true. We know that climate change is going to kill us if we keep burning fossil fuels, plus all of the health impacts, plus the dangerous jobs, you know, and we know that renewables are now cheaper economically, you know, blah, blah, blah. So we've got this thing on our side, which is really powerful. It's called fucking reality. Okay. And so, of course, a lot of people that don't live in the world of reality don't actually sort of, you know, they're not partaking in that, like Trump. I mean, just watching him talk about coronavirus the other day, it's like, you know, I mean, I feel sorry for people in America having to live under an administration which is so given over to that cult of that I don't want to insult your president. Okay, so I'll just be careful here. But
No,
I'm
no.
just saying.
You're in good.
I'm just saying.
Insult.
Yeah, I'm just saying that we've got reality on our side, and that is something you can always go back to and touch. And so we just got to not give in to all of this doomerism and all of this end times nonsense, and just keep pushing forward and get this stuff on the ground. And as soon as we can get projects on the ground that demonstrate themselves, then let the market come and take over. Everyone wants to make a buck, right? It's a good thing. The market's a good thing. You know, and entrepreneurs and startup funds and all of that stuff. We've got all of that. But at the moment, we spend most of our efforts, entrepreneurial efforts, building new smartphone apps and, you know, gadgets that are just not actually helping. So it's what I refer to as distractions, right? So don't get distracted. Just keep focusing on the game. And the game is ecological civilization. And it's through solar radiation management, drawing down 3 trillion tons of carbon, turning off the fossil fuel industry. All of that, we know what it is. We just got to keep pushing forward. And I think this coronavirus is going to be, it's kind of like throwing cat amongst the pigeons. It's going to stir everything up, and reality is going to show up as being really important, because there's nothing more real than having dead people lying in the street because you've got a virus that isn't being properly looked after.
Do you have any cases where you are, Guy?
I think it's about
Australia?
15 in Australia overall. There's been no deaths, but we've got a very good health system. We've also got a Pentecostalist as the prime minister, which is not a good thing. And he got like really roasted, literally. Well, not literally, but we had these massive wildfires over here, and he completely dropped the ball on that. So I think that this coronavirus thing, he's like on notice. You got to get your shit together on this one. So I think of all the countries in the world, we'll be pretty well looked after. But what I'm seeing just from that press conference the other day, and putting Pence in charge and letting Pence be the person that decides what can and can't be said, that's just going to kill tens of or hundreds of thousands of more people that would necessarily die in what is basically a pandemic. You know, I mean, I think what we're going into is a rerun of the Spanish flu. So I'm anticipating 100 million dead over the next 18 months. And most of those will be in developing countries that probably won't even be counted because they don't have the, you know, infrastructure.
They can't test it either. So
yeah. I mean, just imagine if it rips through the shanty towns in the, you know, African cities where there's 10 million people that don't even have documents. You know,
I was worried about India actually.
Well, I mean, any of the countries where they've got, you know, poverty levels, they don't have infrastructure. I mean, look what's happening in Korea and China. I mean, these are very developed. You know, I mean, of all the places in the world that you're going to have an outbreak where that somebody can click their fingers and decide that everyone's going to get locked in their houses for 4 weeks, China, and they've, you know, it's gone wild over there. So just imagine what it's going to be like in a place where there's not even rule of law or, you know, demographic data, healthcare systems. It's just going to knock off a lot of people. And that said, most people that get it don't die anyway. So it's really only the old or the people that need hospital treatment that can't get it, which are really the ones that are going to die. So it's going to change demographics around. It's actually going to, in a way, I think in the Western countries, it's going to potentially reduce a lot of the healthcare burdens because the older people are, the more healthcare they have to receive. If it basically takes out an entire tranche or 2% of the oldest people in a nation, it's actually probably going to actually create a pretty enormous economic boost once the pandemic's over. So anyway, it's fascinating. It's going to totally reorder things, I think.
Yeah, it's going to shake things up pretty heavily.
Yeah.
And are the fires still burning in Australia? Or are we contained
there? We had massive rains.
Okay,
fires out.
I figured.
Yeah. Massive floods. Yeah, good
Well,
stuff.
Well, any last comments from the group? I'm sure, Guy, you have to get on with your day, but I really
I've got something I've got to do, so I'm going to head off nowish. But gentlemen, thanks very much for letting me in, and I certainly look forward to coming back in on subsequent conversations and take these ideas.
I'll message
further,
you
okay?
when things are happening.
Yeah,
No
do
problem.
that. Thank you. Okay, so thanks, guys.
Farewell.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Can't wait to see you again. Thanks so much.
Yeah, look forward to that. Okay, bye-bye. Bye.
Good.
Well, that was fun.
Dylan, you just scored massive points. like LeBron James or something.
Just got to keep on pulling up my Rolodex, you know.
Wow, my goodness. You know, it's interesting. I've mainly been focused on just like, you know, doing everything I need to do so that I can make the block part. We can make the block party happen, and our Tuesday meetings.
A lot of logistics, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we haven't actually spent serious time just doing this kind of outreach.
Yeah.
But you know what? No one of us has to do everything. The point is that we all, you know.
I just got a fire under me. I'm like, we just gotta get rolling, you know.
Oh my goodness.
Throw everything against the wall, you know.
Exactly. There's literally nothing else to do right now. There's no other game.
It's winter over here. I'm like, what else can I do for my winter? Just save the world, you know.
Totally.
With awesome people like you, it's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh no, that was a lot of fun.
Hey.
Oh my gosh.
Jamin, I've got to depart soon too, but if you want, you don't have to, but I found the 3-minute version of Eisenhower's military-industrial complex speech. If anybody wants to hear the 3-minute version.
All right. Well,
before I go.
No, I think we've heard enough from good old Ike. No, but
okay.
It was good stuff.
I'll try to catch you in the morning. I'm not promising because it's midnight here and I have something I have to attend to tomorrow. But anyway, if I don't catch you before you shut down, great job again. Amazing effort. I bow down to both of you.
Well,
Nolan,
right
good
back
job,
at
Nolan.
you, Miles, with your awesome
Okay.
downtown Calgary today. Just amazing.
Well, thank you. I got some exercise. I had to run down there and run back because I had to take my son somewhere, but it was fun. Yeah, I enjoyed doing it. So
Yeah, brother, that was
and
awesome.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, we'll see you later and take care over there in Ireland and
Shoots.
everybody
Aloha,
in
brother.
Hawaii, and we'll catch you next week at least.
Love you.
Aloha.
Miles. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. See you soon.
Yeah, take care, Miles. Been
Thank
good
you,
talking
James.
to you
Take-
today. Yeah, take care, mate. I just have to take a departure for about 5 or 10 minutes. Nature's calling, and I want more tea. So I'll talk to you again in a bit. I'll be back in about 5-10 minutes. Cheers.
Sure. All righty. Well, I could use a little break myself. When was the last time we had a break? It's been like 4 hours or something.
Yeah, it might be a good time to start a new recording.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so we'll stop the current recording. What do you guys say? Shall we take like a 10-minute break or something? How are people feeling?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Call it 10 minutes. I'll stop recording. We're still broadcasting, and feel free to chatter it up, whoever's here.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.